Well, good afternoon, Dublin and Ireland, and you are very, very welcome to Dublin UX on this Saturday, the 27th of Feb. We're back. We're doing this again. The last time we met was the summer last year. We said, let's do a Dublin UX live at home. And yeah, you couldn't stop us. We're back. And today we're back for a very, very special reason. Today is Global World Information Architecture Day, and this is an event that's happening across 50 locations, 24 countries, and 5 continents. And we're very, very proud and excited to have an incredible event lined up with speakers from around Europe and some international content throughout the day. Of course, I'm not doing this alone. I am joined by a presentation and co-hosting team. So I'm going to invite some of the team in. Roisin, how are you? It's been a while. How have you been keeping?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you? Excited to be back?
Oh, indeed, indeed. Do you know what? It was the summer, it was midsummer. We were all thinking, how can we do something? How can we bring the community together? And we decided to run an event. It was a marathon. Was it like 3 hours? It was long, wasn't it?
It was long, but there was like some amazing speakers and some great discussion, so it was super fun.
Yeah, it really,
Yeah.
really was. And we learned a lot from that. So we're back. We've made some adjustments and improvements. And we realized that everyone cannot watch this event live. So it's available to stream immediately afterwards, and we will not be taking it down. So you can watch this again on rewind.dublinux.ie. And if you're watching late, you just joined in throughout the day on live.dublinux.ie, you can just rewind it back to the beginning. If you've missed something, you can pause, you can step away. And also we do have a timed agenda. So if you're tuning in for one talk, of course, you should be tuning in for all the talks. You can pick and choose the talks that you want to hear today. So there's a lot there. It's going to be great. We're always intrigued to find out where everyone is watching from. So we do actually have a little bit of a poll. If you go to slido.com, type in hashtag Dublin UX, or just scan the QR code there, you should be able to take part in that, and we'll bring the results live in a few moments. So slido.com. Of course, there's more than myself and yourself taking part today. So we'll introduce some of the rest of the team in a few moments. But I do want to point out that we do have some wonderful giveaways. And this, as an event, we are taking part as part of a global event. There is something for everyone in the audience. And it's incredible that we can actually say that. We do have something for everyone in the audience. If you follow that link on screen, and actually everyone should have received an email within the last hour with the details. And there's a lot of nice digital swag for everyone as well. If you complete that, you'll be entered into a draw. There is a link to enter into that draw. It's a global lottery, and there's 5 signed copies of Abby Covert's How to Make Sense of Any Mess that will be sent out to 5 lucky winners. And with thanks to Optimal Workshop, there is actually 1 set of noise cancelling headphones that's also going to be hopefully given away to someone here in Dublin. I'm going to bring in, fingers crossed indeed, I'm going to bring in Flavian. Flavian, how are you? You're very welcome. How have you been keeping?
I'm good, thanks. I have some issues with my broadband. I'm sure I'm not the only one. That's the story of my life for the last 12 months.
I know. So Flavian, how have you been keeping curious?
That's a good question. I find you very curious. I've been, because I think reading is a big one. Keeping in touch with my network and see what the people are posting on social media and things. It's just, I think it's a good way to keep curious using other people's curiosity.
Exactly. And Flavia, you're going to help us today with some of our wonderful giveaways. And I do want to highlight a big thanks to some of our global sponsors. We are taking part in the event in conjunction with worldiaday.org, and we have global sponsors. And in particular, I do want to mention Axure has been a platinum sponsor, and Optimal Workshop. We have some giveaways. Flavian, tell us about these wonderful giveaways.
Yeah, we have great giveaways today. So we have this ebook bundle from Rosenfield Media. So we have the Liftoff and the Living in Information, 2 great books.
And there's more.
And we have one team subscription from Axior, RP, which is big ones, big value. So it's very nice price.
And there's more.
You're the operator here. And we have 2 ebooks of the Abby covered bestseller, How to Make Sense of Any Mess.
That's right. So there's 4 giveaways in total. How do people get these?
It's very simple. We're very curious about how you what's happening on the other side of the live stream. So if you can take some pictures and post them on Twitter, they could be funny, or engaging, or interesting. Make us curious, and we'll select the best tweets. We'll present them at the end of the event, and of course, we'll be in touch with the winners after the event to organize the prize delivery.
That's fantastic. So of course you don't have to stay on till the very end. Just engage with us throughout the event today. We'll select, I think it's by 3 o'clock, we'll select those winners and we'll announce them at the end of the broadcast. And good luck if you are taking part. We did love to see some of those funnier tweets. Photographs are fantastic. And I will say anything that is shared could be broadcast. And so keep it safe, of course. Curiosity. This is our theme today. Roisin, how have you been keeping curious?
Gosh, I mean, I think for me, curiosity is just really about, keeping the mind active, and, when you're staring at the same 4 walls all day, you kind of want to, spark that curiosity. So I guess for me, it's really about just making sure I'm seeing something new every day. So if that's a walk, change in my route walk, or reading something or whatever it is, it's just trying to get that like new information brought into my life every day. That's what curiosity is for me.
Do you know what? I think that's a great textbook definition. I'm just going to quote from some material that's available on worldia.org. Is curiosity means being prepared to go on a journey for which you did not know the outcome. And there's a lot of bravery in that. You don't know where you're going to end, but have the strength and bravery to go on that journey, a road less traveled, if you want to put it that way. And it gives us this opportunity to really see the unseen and to create things that we never thought were possible. So as designers, curiosity is such an important attribute. And we're going to explore curiosity and all those wonderful terms and meanings in depth in our 4 talks today. We are a global event today. It is taking place in 50 locations across 24 countries and 5 continents. It started at midnight. I saw them tweeting in the Philippines, and it'll be handing over to the US. So there's a lot of events happening today. But of course, we want to see where our community is. Now, I have been looking at Slido, and apologies if you're not able to actually vote in Slido. For some reason, it's timing out after a minute, and we're getting spurts of people putting their comments in. It's now live, so let's have a little look and see where people are watching today. Let's see what we have here. Technology, will this work? It's always exciting. Okay. Dublin is the biggest. Well, no surprise there. Bournemouth, and of course, this is now live, so please head over to slido.com, and as you add your location, minute.
Someone's excited about where they live.
Exactly. Portrush. Will we get anyone outside of the...
Oh, we have Bournemouth. We have Bournemouth there from the UK. And they've got some sun by the looks of things. Very, very nice for them. It's horrible outside here, so enjoy while you have it.
Exactly. We'll give this a minute and see what else we get through, but this word cloud is working pretty nicely as well. And I'm noticing we've got some comments coming through as well. We've got Carl Bray in the house. There we are. We've done it all. Marie, very, very welcome. And Marta, hot cross buns. Delicious, absolutely delicious. Will we get anyone from outside of Europe? I think we'll leave it at that point. So thank you everyone for contributing into that. Right. we've got some incredible speakers today. We've got some local content and we've got some international content. And I think it's only right to invite our wonderful speakers in. So I'm going to introduce one by one. Natalie, welcome to Dublin UX. How are you?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me today. I'm very excited about this.
Oh, we are very excited to have you as well. Join us. You're going to be leading today, so we're going to have a little discussion with you in a few moments. But firstly, how have you remained curious?
You know what? I need to keep myself actually disciplined about staying curious. So I make up projects for myself. So I have like probably 10 in my backlog. And then I set the goal when I want to accomplish it. Like I'm right now working on my hydroponic setup at home. So I have to actually research each night something so I can learn more to do something. So yeah, so I stay curious by setting project goals up and keep on researching on them and talking to different people about it.
That's wonderful. I know it is constant education and it's a great use of your time as well. So that's fantastic. We're going to come back to you in a moment. You're going to lead us today. We're going to bring in Radu. Radu, how are you? You're very welcome to Dublin UX. How have you been keeping curious?
Hey guys, such a pleasure to be here. You know very well I'm a big fan of Dublin UX and we
Of
go
course.
way back, which is fantastic. So how do I keep curious? Actually, two ways. One is I try to engage in conversations with people, different people, not just designers, not just colleagues, not just friends, but other people from other areas. And I think just having conversations, casual, very casual conversations. Before it used to be over a coffee, now it's just over a Zoom call. But that's how I keep curious and I keep feeding my mini monster that I have in terms of curiosity. So that's kind of one way. And the second one is just reading things that are really outside of my knowledge and just trying to understand things. Like most of the times, the things I engage with make no sense to me because I have no idea what that is, and then I have to find out, and I'll follow the rabbit hole and try and find out that thing. So just those two things really help staying curious.
I think they're fantastic. And yes, I've been speaking with you at WX events now for almost 5 years at this stage. You've been coming to them all and now joining us remotely. So it's great to have you speak to the community today. I'm looking forward to you talking. We'll bring you in later. So thank you so much. And we also have Taiba. Taiba, how are you? Welcome to our wonderful event today. Introduce yourself and how are you remaining curious?
Hi, Patrick. Hello. So introduce myself. My name's Taiba, as you said. I have known you for a long time and was curious about what you're up to. And
There we are. Here we are.
So naturally a curious person. And how have I stayed curious? I've taken to learning new things. And the thing about me is that once I've learned something new, I feel like I've achieved it and I'm no longer curious about that. So I have to go on to something else. So that's how I've stayed curious, just learning new things.
Keep it fresh. Exactly. That's what you do. And we're going to be exploring your topic later on today, which is all about the behavioral science aspects of curiosity. I'm really looking forward to that. We've got incredible speakers, haven't we? I'm really looking forward to actually kicking this off. Roisin, do we have any other comments coming through on YouTube before we get into this today? Any comments for our speakers or anything that's coming about the event?
We don't have any comments for our speakers, but I can say that we have a fully international crew here now with Lisa and Alyssa, both from New York in the US. So welcome, guys. Really excited to have you guys here. And yeah, I think everyone's just excited to get started.
I think so. And I think at this point we will. So for now, we will say goodbye to Taiba. Thank you so much. We'll bring you back in later. And of course, to Radu, we're looking forward to hearing your talk in a moment. And Fabian, you're going to be keeping track on everything that's happening on socials. You're going to be interacting on Twitter with our community. So looking forward to some photographs. So do get tweeting. Wonderful. We'll talk later on. Good. And then there were three of us, and we're going to start today Natalie with a wonderful talk from yourself. I'm just going to bring up your speaker information. You're senior manager at EY Ireland. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey? It's quite interesting. You've traveled the world and you've worked in many places.
Yeah, I think that's where curiosity and boredom comes in, right? It's just kind of like, I always like to learn things. I like to understand more paradigms. And I think that has brought me to so many new places in my life, from work to life, as you mentioned. So I'm native a German, but then we moved to Arizona, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, to Missouri, to Boston, and then to New York, where I did my graduate degree. And then, recently my husband and me fell in love with Dublin, and we decided, let's give up Manhattan to come to Dublin. And that's what we did 1.5 years ago. And, when you move to different cultures, you learn so many different facts about them, how people think. And and from the work-wise, it has been the same way. It's the evolution of what you learn, and then you want to know more, and you just keep on going. And then at one point you end up working as a consultant, because now I can combine it. I can work on different projects in different industries at the same time. So yes. I'm kind of in a good spot right now in my life.
Very good. And we are very pleased to have you with us. You're going to talk about cultural paradigms. I'm really excited. Do you want to give us a 2-second overview as to what the talk is, and then we'll let you take it away in a moment?
Well, you know what? It is about trying to understand how different cultures, different people, and different level of expertise think, and how that means for our content development, and what we have to consider now going forward in the future when we work as UX, UI, and information architects.
Perfect. I'm excited. We're going to give you the floor. The stage is yours. So take it away.
Okay, so I want to, again, thank you for having me. And as I mentioned, I have been a little bit around the world by now. And as I mentioned, I'm born in Germany. I have Vietnamese parents. I lived in different states and now in Dublin. But there was this moment in my life where I really had to start thinking about, hold on, technical issues. I really had to start thinking about, why do people think differently? When you grow up, you have the world, you have a very small view on the world, living in a small town like me in Germany. And keep in mind, that was pre-internet. We had no internet, we had no cell phones, we had books, international magazines was very hard to come by. And my parents announced, we're moving now to the United States. And I was just like, I don't know anything about the United States. And my friend was there the year before. He told me about, America is like that. You have big roads, big cars, big, huge fries and Cokes. And, they use a lot of drugs and they have a lot of guns. So now I'm 16. I'm arriving in Arizona and we're going to the grocery store and we're driving past the Osco drugstore. And I was just like, oh, holy smokes. My friend is right. The Americans are all druggies. They even sell drugs in big, huge supermarket sizes. Well, certainly it took me a while to figure out that, no, the drugs in the States are medication, and I don't have to be scared that they're selling cocaine or heroin in the stores. But that was for the first time where I started to think about, whoa, what I learned drugs are, which I learned British English as drugs, is something else than what really happens colloquial, what happens on the street. And it made me start to think about, how do I see the world and how do other people see the world? And back then I didn't know about mind mapping, but by now I do certainly. And I mapped out for fun my own mind map when I was 16. So I think that is what happened, right? I thought about USA, then I associated USA with drugs, police violence, cactus. I'm in Arizona. I come from the Black Forest, driving. And then, so that's the first level associations I had. And then probably from drugs, I started to think about gangs, death, violence, addiction, heroin, and I hate needles. So it was just like, they have a lot of heroin. And then death, I probably thought, hey, I'm way too young for this. This is not happening. And overdose didn't seem to be a cool way to go either. So I think that is probably what happened in my 16-year-old brain. So for everyone who doesn't know what is mind mapping is really, you pick a topic, you create your first initial associations with it when you hear that concept, and then you dig deeper into it. So from the USA, it went to drugs. That would my first level association be. My second level would be gang stuff, violence, and then you have your tertiary. And honestly, you can go really deep into that. Will be taking a long time, but it's absolutely possible. So here's the other thing then. What happens was, in preparing for this talk and thinking about how am I going to explain mind mapping and the differences of mind mapping. So, my husband and me, bored out of our minds, lockdown, right? We can't do much. So I said, hey, honey, let's do entertainment tonight. Let's do together mind mapping. And he just like, And he agreed on making a mind mapping exercise with me. So in case you're looking for tonight's entertainment or tomorrow, feel free, do a mind mapping with your significant other or your friends, or maybe not your pets, but you could totally do that. And so what we find out is, and to set a bit more of the context, is think about, we would now creating the content for a company called Wine Aficionado in Ireland, or think about a government agency, and they're trying to get people to drink more wine, ideally young professionals. And how would they arrange the content to get young professionals involved in it? So what I would need to do is do the research to understand how those two people are thinking. So I'm going to assume Matt and me are right now the two young professionals. Ideally, I would like to get other people involved, but as we know, this is a bit challenging right now, so it's just us. So if you look at my mind map, about my experience background is I worked as a waitress in my 20s. I worked in some fine dining establishments, so I had to learn some of the buzzwords. And then really most of my experience is just really enjoying wine. So my mind map for wine is, I'm thinking normally about Riesling. And during Riesling, I often think about spring, summer, and then I drank it often I like the Riesling from Hessen, and I like really dry ones. So that's my primary association. My second one is then I also like drinking Malbec. And with Malbec, I always think about steak and Cab Franc. And I have two friends who love Malbec. So it's Jamie and Shauna, which, I mean, from a content strategy, you wouldn't bring up Jamie and Shauna, but it is something that is in my mind, right? And then certainly while I'm eating, that is probably also very interesting stuff. Now, as you can see, it's a really high level. I probably don't think too much about wine. I probably just go to my cabinet, pick up my Riesling and my Malbec, and I'm done. My husband, on the other hand, he had the benefit of going to college where he got paid, well, where he had to pay to take courses. But when he said, hey, I have to pay already, why don't I learn how to drink and pay at the same time? Because otherwise I do it at the bars in the evening anyway. So he took actually a bunch of wine classes and got much more of an expertise knowledge than I did. So that's what's going on in his mind. So when he thinks about wine, he thinks about aged, new world, grape varietal, pairing, fortified, still, sparkling, color, tasting wheel, and so on. And then from there, he goes into 20,000 other things like grape varietal. I didn't even count how many associations he makes on a secondary level with that. I actually had to stop him. He wanted to go you see, by wine tasting wheel. Natalie said no more, because he actually wanted to go then into all the different spices and flavor profiles. And I just had to say, no, we have a short presentation. I can't cover this all. But you can see the complexity of it, of what he was thinking when he hears wine. So I wanted to map it out in a list format, so it's much easier to see and to compare. So in my mind, very simplistic. In Matt's mind, it's very complicated, which then brings up a very good question. How do we actually communicate with each other? Right? There must be an assumption that because it's so different, we cannot talk to each other. And just to show you a little bit the overlap, these are really the topics we have an overlap in, which is Riesling, food pairing, grape varietal, tasting wheel, and old world. However, we're making here a very, very big assumption. The big assumption is that I know Riesling is a grape varietal, and Matt has in his mind knowing that Riesling is a grape varietal. It goes both ways. Same thing with food pairing. How would a person necessarily know that the tasting wheel is a tool to help really with the food pairing? And then if you're from upstate New York, you may think Riesling is just an upstate New York thing, while it is really an old world German thing. So I wanted to bring that out of just so if I'm now wine aficionado of Ireland and I'm trying to develop a product or a website or content or social media channel, whatever it is, how do I get those two different people to talk to each other and be attractive to both of them? Because if you come to me and tell me about, well, in the old world, wine is, I would just like, yeah, dude, no, this is late nights. I don't want to really have really deep, complex old world conversation or information. And probably if Matt would see, oh, she just talks about Riesling on a very superficial level, he would probably think, man, this is like, I already know that. I'm bored. I don't want to, get more into this website or engage in that conversation. So when we think about strategy, we really have to start thinking about how do we layer it for people who may not have as much expertise. As well, we have to think about how do we keep people engaged which have a deep information or expertise in an area. How do we marry that, right? The other thing is too to think about is that it has to be really fast, because if one of the wrong buzzwords are not there or the right formation of the content isn't there, you will lose one or the other group. Or certainly as a brand, you could say, you know what, I don't really care about Natalie's, I'm just caring about Matt's, and we're going to go deep dive into it. Or we could do the other thing as well. Or we can think about maybe we need to split different applications or different content for different groups and publish it on different aspects. For example, I'm still on Facebook. I know it's a very controversial topic nowadays, but probably if you put something on Facebook, I will probably read it. So maybe this is the right angle to address Riesling on Facebook. And Matt, who is not on Facebook, who does definitely more Reddit, maybe it is there the right place to post more of the content for more deeper conversations. I'm not saying use Reddit or Facebook. I'm just saying there's different channels where a communication and type of content might be more appropriate to put both groups with lesser and higher end expertise together. So from that here, I wanted to go into the next thing is, you can do research on this. I normally call it exploratory research because you don't want to go around and make everybody do mind maps. It will take too long, but you can do it in an interview format. There's the golden rule where people say 30 people up for exploratory research. I know you can do it also with less. I think it is really about pattern and recognizing the pattern of what is the main interest of your target group, right? So what you would do is you ask them like interview question of like, what in wine would interest you the most? And then they would start to give you your first level association. Now in that type of interview, you really have to listen like a hawk, because in the first level association, they may say certain buzzwords, which you will come back to as your secondary level exploratory words. So you have to pay really close attention of the implication of the first sentence. But you can do that in a whole entire research format, and then you can get a very good idea of the content strategy of your target market, what are the buzzwords and what they're interested in content-wise. And as some of our researchers know, you did all the research, and then there's the no-sayer, right? There's this one person or this group or several people who say, no. You did all your research, this is all good and nice, but you know what? I know wine. I'm the wine expert. You got it all wrong, and your research is just not qualified. And you're just like, what just happened in this case? So what happens in this case really is, it is probably a difference in cultural paradigms. What this person is probably thinking, or this expectations, does not fit with all the things they have been growing up with or thinking. So I want to introduce the cultural paradigm, which is the cultural web model from Gary Johnson, Kevin Scholes. And what a cultural paradigm is really what we believe at the core of our existence. And this is more for companies, organizations, but at the same time, the cultural paradigm also is often, can be seen also in context of different cultures. And there are different foundations for it, right? Which is the stories, ritual and routines, symbols, org structure, control system, and power structures. And we all have seen it, especially right now. I think it's a very hot topic in the sense of we are experiencing a lot of cultural paradigm shifts. We experience it by working from home. How is that from our expectation sets before, where we always were expected to be in the offices? And then there's certainly much more heavier topics like Black Lives Matter and equality, the power shifts, or shifting power structures, or discussing, is the power structure as it was used to be still applicable? Do we need to shift it? And certainly with all those shifts, what we have known before has now shifted to an unknown, and is often very uncomfortable for many people. So I wanted to go deeper, though, more going back to how it all relates to content, because that's really what I want to talk about today. I think America is a very interesting place. Why? because you have multiple cultures with multiple cultural paradigms living in one country, negotiating each day, each moment, their limits and boundaries, and how we find a compromise between all of this. So I want to make, again, a hypothetical situation, which is, let's say, educational company, government agency, anything education-based, and let's say they're targeting Hispanics right now, or looking at the Hispanics cultural paradigm. And something what is very important in Hispanic culture is the concept of familismo, which is pretty much saying that there are very strong family ties, which other cultures have as well. However, what it also means, they're helping and supporting them on the financial level. People would go, or children would go out and help their parents to make more money or make enough money to support each other. The Pew Hispanic Center study, for example, found that 74% of the Hispanics were hindered in the need to work in order to provide economic support for their families. Now, I don't like the word hindered, because for the Hispanic, another thing is education is not just academics. It is also learning cultural values they have been carrying on. So it is a much more holistic view on education, and maybe academics is not the only way to learn it. So saying hindered, it's a little bit of a questionable word, but I wanted to point out that the academic and the family support is a little bit of a different dynamic in the Hispanic culture. Which now we go to the other spectrum of the Asian Americans in education. And I picked on purpose Hispanic and Asian Americans because technically there are so many subcultures within both groups. And it's hard certainly to make such big generalizations, but if I use bigger groups, maybe that could work. So within the Asian Americans in education, right, there's the Confucian ideology and the concept of interdependency. So what really happens is that the parents expect their children to have a high-paying job when they come out of school. And most Asian Americans do comply with that and try to help support what their parents are saying. And why do they do it? It is really because for them, in their mind, is my parents sacrificed so much in having me and providing financial support and raising me and feeding me. So I have, as a child, to pay back by having a good paying job to support them. It is a handover of generation. Now, this is how you may know a little bit problematic. Some of the Asian Americans have the highest suicide rates in college because they suddenly realize they don't want to be doctors or engineers. And that comes also now thinking about in a bigger topic of the content strategy. So going back to, if I would be now a company focusing on education, trying to integrate Hispanic and Asian Americans and tailor the content and my programs to them, what would I, for example, have to think about? Because they have such a different cultural paradigm. What you may want to think about is breaking down the content into 15 to 20-minute chunks for the Hispanic students. You know that they might be traveling between work and school. They may, between helping their parents preparing food or taking care of their siblings, and then maybe they just have 15, 20 minutes to teach or to learn. So if it's smaller chunks to digest much faster, that might be more helpful. It might also be more helpful to think about social activities around it. Does it have to be reading? Can it be a game? Can it be something to work with their siblings with, because they're, again, strong family ties? Maybe we have to rethink how education would work with that. And then certainly we have to think about Hispanic family values, and that it's also passing on those values part of education. So will that have to be included in the information or into the lectures or the classroom environment? Now, if we then look at the Asian Americans, that's certainly a little bit different. And what we probably would want to look for is a reward system or a stronger reward system, because for them, the pressure is high to go back to their parents and say, hey, I did something great. I'm on the right track. See, I'm paying back for all the things you're giving up for me. I'm doing well. So do we have to build in a stronger education reward system so the parents have more transparency to it? And then the other thing is, maybe we can help them also to understand more that there are other jobs besides being a physician or being an engineer, which can make money. So they may not have to be forced to become physicians, or, have more of a wider choices. And maybe we can reduce also the suicide rate. And sorry for being so grim, but it would be great of thinking about different ways of helping them to understand the bigger world. And now, having looked at cultural paradigms, having looked at mind mapping, I want to go into a different topic, which is, or the last topic, which is how language affects how we think. So we have our cultural values, which determine how we surround everything by. We have our expertise level. But how does language really affect us? And, you know, I have created so many run-on sentences and forgot other things in English language in my writings. And I have always to check on it. And there is really something that we think differently in a different language. And Saper brought a really great quote on, which is, the worlds in which different societies live are distinct worlds, not merely the same world with different labels attached. It is not just about translating one text into another one, but understanding the concepts which are behind a sentence, a paragraph, and what we say. I thought there was some interesting thing to illustrate that, which is, for example, Russia has 12 words for color, and Dani, which is New Guinea, the language speaking New Guinea, has just 2. So I'm wondering, if I'm Russian and I want to talk about colors and I have 12 different colors, I want to communicate to somebody who speaks Dani, and that person just has 2. How do I explain that concept to them, that they are comfortable with it? And do they see it the same way? Because a hypothesis would be that the colors in Russia comes probably also from the climate, seeing the different color changes. And Dani probably they have cold and warm colors, which is probably also related to the weather and the conditions they have been growing up. And that has been informing the language. So how do you communicate that difference across, that you can get the same sentiment? And probably you can't, but it is a different way of thinking. And it is a challenge we will have to overcome, more so of how we come to an agreement with different concepts. Another thing is lexicalization, which is pretty much that there are certain words which describe different concepts. And I'm going to pick on a very famous German word, which is Schadenfreude. And by definition, Schadenfreude means finding joy in someone else's misfortune. And therefore, and there's no word for it in English. Now, that sounds like, oh, the Germans are making fun of the people who have a misfortune. And maybe, you know, English speakers don't have the same kind of feeling. However, there is a connotation to Schadenfreude. It's normally when somebody was very pompous and said, hey, yeah, I'm always so cool, I can accomplish all of that, and I'm better than you are, and then the person fails. So it's more of like, Schadenfreude is used in like, yeah, I told you so. It's more in that notion, but again, there's no word for it. So how do we explain that concept? And if you just saw me, how many words I needed to explain that one word in a different language, you're like, how do those different concepts vary? I did want to end on a smaller or simpler note, and I'm going to use the armadillo. It was kind of like, it made me think about this different descriptive natures of language. Armadillo in German is called Gürteltier, which really means animal with belts. And it kind of makes sense because it looks like it's an animal and it has this thing around it. It could be a belt. Maybe it has, you know, fancy belt, could be. And in English, armadillo comes from the Spanish words, which mean little armored one. But if you step back and think about the connotation of that word, little, there is a relationship establishment that little must be smaller than me. Little, it's not called small either. It's called little, but this could be an English-Spanish translation, I think. Little has a little bit of a dismissiveness or not such a serious notion on it. So it's more like dismissive small. And then if you think about armored, that means if something is armored, there is a predator, there's a defense mechanism happening at the same time. So if you take those two words and that notion of that one animal, one culture sees it as an animal which has a weird thing around it with no notion if it's in danger or not in danger, aggressive or not aggressive. The other language chose a word which has a dismissive and a defense or aggression level associated with it because armored, what does that mean? So the concept of this animal or the perception of the animal in the two different cultures might be very different. And it might be also very subconscious because it's a linguistic thing, which is certainly the study of psycholinguistics, which is total fun when you get into that. So I want to do in closing, so wrap up what this talk was really about was, right? we know all that we think differently, but I think we have to go a bit deeper. We have to understand more about the cultural paradigms we encounter in our daily lives, working with a lot of different internationals, understand the sensitivities and the values they carry. And then certainly if we're thinking now on a work level and content strategy, we really have to think about the aspect of how do we make content relevant for different cultural paradigms, and expertise levels. And then localization has to be all of that. And last, certainly finding the right words for it and making sure it aligns with the message we want to communicate to the other cultures. So I think we are really in the infancy stages of thinking about localization, languages, communication across different cultures, but it's definitely a very rich topic. And I think that's it, what I have.
Amazing, Natalie. Thank you so much for that really insightful talk. I feel like my mind has just been blown wide open with this, and especially just your points about, you know, this sort of multi-layer, multifaceted take on how you approach content design. So amazing. Thank you so much for that incredible talk. We had some questions coming through, but I am conscious of time. So I think we're going to move on to Radu, our next speaker, and we'll catch up on those questions towards the end of this. But thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you.
A big, do you know what? Honestly, you made me think so many times. I've taken tons of notes here. We will bring you back in for Q&A at the very end. So well done on an incredible talk and some great insights there into linguistics and really cultural diversity. So that's fantastic. Okay, we're going to bring Radu in. Radu, how are you?
Good.
It's great having you part of our stream. So let's get a few things lined up here. There we are. We're back. We're back. Radu, again, we've mentioned already that you've been coming to our events for such a long time at this stage that it's great now for you to actually be speaking today. You're going to talk and present something a little bit different. It's not going to be the standard slide. So I'm very excited about that. Do you want to give us a little background about yourself, first of all, and then we'll go into what you're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, sure. Actually, just on the back of Natalie's presentation and subjects, which, by the way, absolutely fantastic. I have so many questions.
Yes.
I would love to catch up and ask. Actually, one of the things just you asked about my background. Of course, coming from a background of kind of maths and physics in college, what I've done the normal thing of going to law school, because that's where the money is, right? So you have to kind of do something that makes money, right? So I ended up going to law school for about 3 years, and then I just quit. It was terrible. I couldn't live with myself. I was really not in the right context. But that kind of it made me think about the pressures and you know, the kind of things that probably some of us have experienced anyway because of societal pressure and so on. So it's actually quite funny because in work I have a bunch of guys call me Judge GTAB because they're like, yeah, you went to. I was like, yeah, there you go. I'll have to live with that shame for the rest of my life. But I mean, I was always a creative person, and you know, drawing and sketching and sketching on walls and whatnot, and you know, driving my parents crazy. And so kind of coming back to that in the second stage of my kind of life, I said, okay, well, design it's a thing. UX was not a thing basically when I started, and that was about 10 years ago. We kind of knew there is a thing that, you know, it's called experience and so on, but nobody really knew what it is specifically. I mean, mind you, if you would ask me 3 years ago what's information architecture, I'll probably tell you, well, it's a structure of sorts, right? I had no clue that in you know, for about 3 years I'll be working with information architecture and going quite deep in this topic, which is quite exciting. And so what I've done for today, based on my knowledge and experience of building information architecture for websites and apps and SaaS services and so on, I basically just mapped some of the projects I've been working with in the past few years, and then I highlighted what pains and what gains you should keep in mind, because there are things that will catch you out if you're not paying attention. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through a process. Obviously, try and use something that is not just a slide. So I used a whiteboarding tool called Miro, which some people might be familiar with. And I'll walk you through that, and I'll try and point things out along the way.
And we must bring in a comment from Tiffany. Radu, your mic looks profesh. There we are.
Thank you. I was telling you guys that, little did I know that when I purchased this mic over a year ago, I will end up using this every single day for 7, 8, 9 hours, sometimes even weekends, and doing podcasts and interviews and so on. So listen, invest in a quality sound and mic and headphones. It's worth it.
It definitely is. Radu, we're going to give you the floor. It's all yours. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. And some of you I've met during the UX Dublin UX events, and some of you I haven't. And obviously, the past year challenges of not meeting in person, it's kind of hard, but we're gonna get through this, and hopefully we can make the most of it. So just really quickly kind of going through some of the things I'll be presenting. So I'm Radu. I'm a lead UX designer. I work for a Dublin or an Irish agency called Granite Digital. It's a company around 70, 80 people, and constantly growing and acquiring other companies. So we tend to do a lot of work around UX and SEO and marketing and development, and support and sales and so on. So we're quite robust as a company. What I will do now, I'll just move on really quickly. So let's see if this works as intended. So really quickly, I worked for companies like Deloitte and Groupon and Ding. I studied in DIT and IADT. Actually, DIT is no longer DIT, as you guys know, it's TU Dublin. It's just I hate their new logo, so I'm going to keep using DIT. So as part of the Granite agency, I work with quite a lot of companies in several spaces like fintech, travel, healthcare, transport, education, retail, and so on. So as part of this collaboration and the work I do for companies like this, I tend to be the first person interacting with the client or with the customer. So I'll be there and I'll walk them through the process. And of course, one of the first steps that you do will be looking at information architecture and start there and start building and understanding what is it that what is that chaos that you have to make sense of. And I have just before the kind of the first lockdown, we had our last workshop. Well, it was kind of a face-to-face meeting with a bunch of people, and that's me basically. I have a picture there with me kind of sitting in front of everybody, and I know this will make my mom really proud, because when I was a kid, I was so shy that she would send me to buy bread and milk, and I'll say no, just because I had to go face another human being. So the fact that I've managed to stand in front of a crowd and talk and present things, for me, it's an accomplishment in itself. So thank you so much. But there you go, Mom, that's for you. So kind of moving on to the subject of the conversation today. So the pain and gains, right? I mean, it's all about being inquisitive, and we know the topic of today's event is curiosity, and try to see things through that lens. So, of course, when you look at information systems, information architecture, which we will go into a bit in a second, you kind of look and see, well, what is information? What is information systems? And I found this really lovely definition that information is the resolution of uncertainty, which I think is beautiful. It's such a beautiful way to express something so complex. So we know information can be communicated, thought, understood, manipulated, interpreted, encrypted, and so on. And as designers, information is our thing. It's a fundamental thing that we use. It's if you like, it's the clay that we mold in different shapes and sizes. So when you apply that inquisitive mind to analyze and structure and communicate that information, you immerse yourself in something absolutely beautiful. And, that thing is information architecture. So what I like to do, I like to kind of move on and show you, tell you a bit more about this. And Patrick, you already mentioned that, the guys in World IA, they have this very lovely definition of curiosity, which is basically to go on a journey of which you do not know the outcome. And this pretty much describes every single day in my life. I know what's on my list, and I know the kind of things and the projects I will work on, but I never know the outcome. The outcome is always a surprise, which I think it really describes really well what it means to be a designer. So we kind of go back in terms of curiosity, but information. What is information, right? Where we're trying to define this a bit, so we get a good understanding and background. So storytelling, we know, goes way back, right? And it's all to do with knowledge transfer, right? Even if we look at cave paintings, the development of writing in Mesopotamia, which was a long time ago. But then kind of somewhere in 1958, these guys, Levitt and Whistler, they kind of caught on something, and they looked at how would management look in the 1980s, and they published an article in the Harvard Business Review, HBR, about that, right? Again, being 1958, and that's where the first mention of IT, which is information technology, which back then was a thing that didn't really have a name. They kind of knew it's a thing, it's coming, but they don't really know how to define it, right? So they wrote this amazing article. And what they did, basically, they defined something that will completely change the paradigm of how we work and how we live and how we consume information, right? So back in the 1990s, of course, the dot-com boom, that pushed quite a lot of new technology. That simply meant more data. More data was created at an unprecedented pace. So information technology came to a very play an important role in that. Not to be confused with information science, which is something quite different. But it sums up to the point that if you want a career in IT, obviously you need to find technology exciting. And recent studies have shown that as a UX designer, you have a very inquisitive mind, right? So 99%, they actually quantify this. There's studies that quantify 99% it's intellectual curiosity. Of course, with 1% just, giving out about bad UX everywhere. So we have that balance, right? Or always give out about things, but then also be curious. So it's a tiny percentage. Well, some might argue it's a lot more because we do complain a lot as UX designers. But Let's go back to information technology. So information technology, it's all about collecting, classifying, transmitting, storing, retrieving, manipulating information, right? Which pretty much sounds a bit like a librarian, and that's the kind of things a librarian will do, right? But also a librarian will also use an information system to make sense of all that data they have, right? So that's the whole thing. The purpose of an information system is to turn data into useful information, right? So of course we need to look at the system side of information systems, which a system basically means repeating a task and getting consistent results. So if you think of a CMS or even a mortgage calculator, right? It's all about that consistency. Like the results are not random. It's not chaotic. They tend to be reliable, right? Which is what we want of a system. Also, the systems, again, collect, manage, and distribute data on demand. And that pretty much describes every single company in existence, like Google, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Fitbit, and so on. And also, we know that without systems, there'll be utter and absolute chaos. And so you can see information systems are usually made up of these 5 components: hardware, software, communications, databases, and human resources, right? So we're looking at a very specific way of making sense of that chaos, which is information architecture. And this is where this sits in that hierarchy. So you have IT, you have information systems, and then information architecture is part of that, right? Of course, it has, like we mentioned, roots in library science and cognitive psychology. But in essence you have to think of yourself as a digital librarian, right? You think about where information should go, which elements are important, and also who's using this, the people, the admins, the SEO engines, and everything. That your one goal is to create a positive human experience, right? But the real pain at this point of working in this field is that you realize at this point you need to know a lot more than you already do to be able to create that positive human experience. So this is where you will have to start following different rabbit holes. And if you're a curious and inquisitive person, it will help, right? Because again, you could be a librarian that hates books, and that will be the worst thing for you. So if you're curious, you will be a good librarian. It will help you in your job. So now if we look at, what is that positive human experience? Well, it's all about finding what we need when we need it and make it quickly and easily, right? So have that access to the information unhindered for everybody, right? Luckily, there's a information architecture discovery process, which is what you do when you start a project, no matter if it's a website or an app or a web app or any kind of flow system that you're designing, will have a discovery process, and you should never skip that. So, of course, your first thing that you do is you have to keep in mind, you take the team on a journey. You and your clients and your stakeholders and everybody has to come on that journey with you, right? And you have, the real pain here is that you really have to make sure everybody understands what this is, right? So you have to start with the very basics, right? So for example, and the way I explain and I engage with customers and clients is that, I start with saying that there's two sides of our information architecture, and I want to make sure that they will get this, right? We have the sitemap side of things and the navigation. Now, the pain at this point is that you need a lot of patience and repetition and examples to make sure that they understand the difference between two, because it's not as straightforward as you might think. So what I like to use, I like to first of all explain who the users of each and one of the sitemap or the navigation might be, but also I try to use something that people can relate to. So I'll use a restaurant analogy, and I'll say, well, a sitemap represents the way a kitchen and the back end of a kitchen is organized, right? The equipment, the layout, the staff hierarchy, the ingredients, the ordering system, everything that makes that kitchen a kitchen, right? And as part of that, of course, you have to understand that you have that organic traffic, right, for the sitemap. So Google will measure the success of your search by the number of clicks a URL gets, right? So when you click on a search, URL will start counting and say, well, how many other clicks did you get from that link? If you go back to the browser, it's a fail. You absolutely failed, and Google will say, or any kind of search engine will say, no, this is not relevant content. So. And of course, what search engines will do, they're human-centered design. They will just try and emulate human processes. So the more human you can be and logical in your structure, the better for your search results and your SEO. And then to kind of follow that restaurant analogy in the navigation side of things, the navigation represents the food menu. So when a customer comes in the restaurant, they sit down, you are giving them a menu. So that is the navigation. They don't care about how the kitchen is laid out. They just look at what food that you have, what types of meals you serve, what drinks can they buy, what the calorie count is, and prices and so on. So, and of course, what's available, what's not available. So as part of that, you follow a few principles, one being click economy. So, a good rule of thumb is to keep people only 4 clicks away from relevant content. So never hide content in a very complex taxonomy. Always kind of try and think of upper levels and lower levels and make sure that you serve information at the right time. Also Hicks law, which is something we know and we use quite a lot. The time it takes to make a decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. I also use that example of a bottle of ketchup. When you want to buy ketchup or mustard and you go to the shop and you have 3 shelves, floor to ceiling full of options. And, the more options you have displayed, the longer it'll take me to decide which I want to buy, right? I might end up not buying any because I can't make up my mind. So we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to show things in a small amount at the beginning anyway. And also another one is you have to keep in mind that if anything you do, any kind of app you build or website, if your business structure is reflected in that sitemap, then you're not user-centric. You are business-centric, right? And it will take a bit longer for people to find what they're looking for. Now, the gain is once you've gone through this and everybody understood what you're saying, everybody's on board. And you got their attention. And this is what you want. This is something very, very important. So now the next step will be establishing the business goals. So primary, secondary goals for whatever the product you build, you need to have them there. Now, a business goal, even though it is a business and it is to generate income or to increase revenues, that's never a good kind of goal, right? If you can rephrase it slightly and make it, we're trying to keep you healthy, we're trying to take a bit of pain and improve it, or minimize the pain, or even eliminate the pain if we can. That's a great primary and secondary goal, right? And if you can help the business think and understand what this is, those goals will help you guide your structure. So it's very important that you get them right at this point. Now, also, we know you need to understand at the very beginning who will be using the product that you're building. So understanding and defining who will interact with it is essential, right? So at this point, anything you have, even user interviews, analytics, metrics, it doesn't matter. Just try and bring them in and define journeys, define really quickly a summary of what that person is. You might not need a fully fleshed out persona. You might just need a user profile, but make sure you have that represented as a user, and try and understand and define them to some extent, right? Now, the pain is you already know, you need to know your audience from the beginning, right? And that's kind of that. When you start a project, maybe you might not have that. So you need to get that quite quickly. The gain is that this will force you to ensure a very human-centric approach to your process. So that's you can see the way that works in tandem, right? Now, the next step after you've defined that is you move on to a competitor analysis. So kind of establishing a benchmark, trying to understand, getting some inspiration from what other people have been doing. Now, we use a tool called DynoMapper. And what this does, it can scan a website and it will tell you something about that information. So for example, I scanned Apple. I was crazy enough to put this tool on the website to scan Apple, and I'm surprised I was actually allowed to do it. And I did scan the whole website. You can see, I think it can't even count as many pages as Apple has, right? But you can see some of the things. You can see the way they have a very narrow and actually very wide and very deep structure as well. So both. It might be to do with the strategy that they're picked, obviously having one website for all countries, right, which is probably an SEO nightmare. But you can see the way most pages that they have are actually situated on level 4, which I was kind of telling you, the 4-click economy. This will kind of tend to hint at that. The most important and relevant content is at level 4. And then, of course, they have level 5, 6, 7, and so on. But you can see the numbers of pages going down. So these are all things you can learn by just scanning or doing a competitor analysis. You can look at, for example, how many errors, which, to be honest, for such a big website as Apple, they only have 911 bad links and about 1,600 errors, which is absolutely amazing, right? If you think about it. But there you go. They do have some issues there. And then you can visualize things, right? So you can look, well, if I look at just the 3 levels deep, how would that look like? How would that sitemap structure look for an SEO, right? For an SEO, for a search engine. And this is what they do. They just go in and visualize this, right? So there's a lot you can learn. This is a gain here. There's a lot you can learn by just observing and looking at things. And then, of course, if you want to go and see the max levels, so let's say you go 10 levels and you try and visualize all the 25,000 pages, it's just beautiful. Just look at this structure. You can see Apple Canada. You can see Apple, I think, Hong Kong. I'm not sure if this one is China. And then fourth, look, the fourth largest website from the Apple ecosystem. It's actually Apple Ireland, which is interesting, very interesting. But you can see the way now you can start thinking of structures, right? So, having a level 1 as a master, level 2 as a theme, level 3 as a section, and level 4 as a content. And then you restrain all that within 4 levels, right? So there's no need to go deeper than that unless you really, really have to. But again, it's such a beautiful thing. Just look at this. I love to print this and just have a frame, which sometimes I do. Okay, so you can also do all sorts of scans. You can look at different hierarchies. You can look at different flows. You can look at anything that goes into your decision making, right? So again, the pain is if you don't like this kind of work, well, you're at that point where you're a librarian that hates books, right? So try and think of that. Don't hate books. Books are amazing. So you have to learn how to love this kind of process. So now, of course, you have to, as a next step, you have to define and group content, which is the big pain at this point. Is nobody expects to talk about content right now. Everybody wants to move on quite quickly to visuals, but there's one step you have to do before that, just prioritizing what you have already, right? So you have to start thinking about that content. Also, having discussions with content teams and start, kicking them into gear, that's amazing, right? And you have to try and do that as much as possible. And of course, you can start organizing, you can do workshops, and you can start working with people in the business that are familiar with this and start trying, grouping things. But you can't do this alone. That's a pain. You have to, it takes a village to build an information architecture, right? So the gain is that it brings the whole team together, and by doing that, you're more efficient, and you just get everybody's input. And as soon as you have that done, you can start organizing things in a logical fashion, right? And you start looking at bullet points, and you have different bullet points, and start creating that structure that begins to emerge. Now, of course, as you go through this, you be ready to go through multiple iterations. The number of versions and revisions will actually increase quite quickly. So make sure you have a solid versioning system. If not, you will end up with that final.1a, that this is final, this is I'm losing my mind, ... So make sure you have your versioning system in place. Now the gain for this is that the whole team is contributing to this. So what this means is that they're actually part of the solution, and that's a fantastic thing to have at this point in the process. Okay, so of course, as soon as you've done that, the pain is that was just the beginning, right? And so now you have to move on to the actual design of the information architecture, which is, the gain is you have built a strong foundation. So now you start looking at the sitemap. Of course, you involve SEO experts. If you don't have one, get one, because they're absolutely crucial at this point. Now you can choose to do card sorting to sort out the mental model. You can do all sorts of analysis, and you can look at different ways of structuring data, right? You can also just do a lo-fi, like get a tool like Miro and get some people in a room and ask them to organize sticky notes for you, right? So this is kind of a just quick, it might not be as accurate, which is a pain, but it's quick to set up, right? So you can do that really quickly, and it will help you inform your decisions. Then the navigation, and this is kind of the bit I love, right? The tree testing bit. And this is where you go and you ask specific questions, and you ask the users and to validate your assumptions, and you go and, you can actually get metrics really quickly. And this is a part of the process I absolutely love, because you get such a rich insight and data, and you can see the amount of questions you can ask, 20 for 2 groups, and you can get this amazing answers, right? Now, the pain is you need time to analyze and create insights, because without insights, you're not going to do anything, right? Now, the gain is all your assumptions will be tested, so nothing is left to chance, which is fantastic. Now, wireframe and user testing. The point is to make sure that you have the header and the footer working really hard for a website, for example. You have to make sure they're optimized as much as you can. Now, there's a few things you need to keep in mind, is that when you get to the stage, not everybody can visualize wireframes. Not everybody can see things as you can, right? So keep that in mind. But to this point, you are actually closer to visuals, which people love. People love seeing visuals, like UI. It's a thing that we absolutely love, and we're primed for that, right? Now, you have to explain the goals. You have to explain what is it that you're trying to accomplish. You have to explain that, this is not the final design. And also that what you're about to see might look like a fully expanded Swiss knife, right? Which could be something like this, that shows everything exposed and everything at the same time happening on the same page, right? But again, you got some visuals. You can do different things. You can visualize all sorts of things. You can get into menus and a lot of detail analyzing that, right? And then what you have also, just providing multiple options. And I think that's really important for businesses. You can't just go assume that something that you think might work for users might work for the business as well. So it's always about finding that balance. But the business can ultimately decide what works with their strategy, right? Now, we know a bit about pains and gains of information systems. There's a lot now. You have this understanding. So where else can you go? Well, you can look at information architecture heuristics, SEO. It's a great place to start if you're on this path. Content strategy, absolutely fantastic if you can follow up and read on that. You can look at the future of IA. You can look at the information theory, which is absolutely beautiful. It's such an amazing and complex subject. Cognitive psychology, information systems, information service systems, right, which is kind of service design, but for information systems. It's amazing. And now, the pain and gains of being inquisitive is, the biggest pain for all this process is that you will have to create a report. You will have to document every single thing that you've done, create insights, centralize them, and make them available, right? So that's something that people don't really talk about, but you need to allocate time in your basically in your budget to do this, right? Now, the biggest gain from this is that you are now talking and walking like a UX oracle. You have so much knowledge, everybody will come to you asking questions, which is fantastic, right? So let's see, what did we learn so far? Well, you don't just work in IT. Now you work with information systems. You design with information, which is something we forget quite easily. There's a discovery process to information architecture. There's a design process. You should never skip the discovery process, even though it's tempting to do so. But also what we learn is that pains become gains, right? And that's something you have to understand. When something is painful, it will be better. You will learn something from that. So never skip that pain. Always go through it and embrace it. Basically, stay curious. If you want to get access to these slides, just scan that QR code. That will take you to a Miro board, and you'll be able to access what I just shown you. Also, you can stay in touch. You can strike a conversation. Again, I love feeding my curiosity, having conversations. Reach me on LinkedIn, send me a message, let's have a chat. And also, if you feel generous, please donate for Cystic Fibrosis Ireland. It's a really great cause. And this is powered by Strike Pay, so it's an incredible way to donate contactless and without being there, and it's just a phenomenal thing. So scan the QR codes, whichever one you want, even all three if you prefer, and get in touch, and let's continue the conversation.
Woo! Radu, that was incredible. And I think everyone can join me in saying that was just super to see that through Miro. I think everyone's a bit buzzing after it. And I think there's a couple of people on here who can really say it best, and that's this, mind blown. Second that, mind blown. Like, I think everyone is just really loving this. So yeah, I think there was already questions and people asking for these slides. So yeah, get your QR reader out and scan that. And we'll have some questions, of course, during our Q&A session. But just, yeah, wow, thank you so much. Amazing.
No problem. It was definitely time well spent to centralize all this, because now I know quite a lot of my colleagues actually understand what I do as a job. So it's it's a plus on all sides. Nice.
Always a good motive there as well. So we now have Patrick in with us again.
Indeed, fantastic. Great use of Miro, I have to say. This is a real information architects talk, and some very deep exploratory work there, I have to say.
What's really funny is that just as I started presenting, the guys in Miro pushed the message on my screen saying, we have scheduled maintenance at 4 a.m. And I was like, hold on a second, is that Central Time? Is that GMT? Is like, what are you doing to me?
That is not what you want to see, panic stations, but yeah. Great talk, great HCI references in there, Hick's Law, and things like that. So well done. We got lots of comments coming through. We will bring you back at the end for a little bit of a group conversation. So Radu, really appreciate your time putting together the talk, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
Wonderful. So Roisin, how is the day going for you?
Going pretty good. I have some snacks here beside me, which I'm munching my way through. A lesson learned from last time. I was absolutely starving by the end of it.
That is quite true. Yeah, and we don't get a time really to get away. We're constantly on the stream for the full 2 hours, 3 hours. So it is good to stock up on things around you. Great content so far, I have to say. I don't think we've ever done a day dedicated to information architecture. We've had little bits and pieces, but it's really insightful. It's one of those key areas of UX that I'd like to say it's not overlooked, but often it is. Sometimes as designers, we can go into the design, the high fidelity, and we don't really spend as much time looking at the organization of that data. And as Radu said, there's multiple parts to that. And as Natalie pointed out, there's research that goes into that as well. How is the reception going down on socials?
Just crazy. It's blown up. Everyone is just loving it. And yeah, just lots of love for the speakers so far. And I think everyone's excited for Taiba's coming up next. And yeah, just buzzing, I think.
That is it. You've teed it up very nicely. Taiba, there you are. You are very, very welcome to our wonderful celebration of everything information architecture today. How have you been?
Oh, great. I've been listening to the talks and so inspiring. And you're reminding me of days of how I use mind mapping and information architecture. It's fantastic.
Yeah, this is the whole point of this, is to feed your curiosity and to inspire people to hone their practices or maybe do things differently. I think that's really important. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your talk? It's a very interesting exploration, I believe.
Well, okay. So my talk is not so much about IA, but how I became interested in curiosity because of my work. So I'm going to be talking a bit about how my journey began in information architecture with you, Patrick, and looking at content management systems, but then changed to, agile deliveries, systems deliveries, mobile applications, and now service design and digital transformation. So I'm interested in how do you keep your curious edge so that you can have better service design and transformation.
I think that's fantastic. Can't wait to find out more. So it's all yours. Take it away.
Fabulous. Thank you. So a little bit of background about me. My first proper role after graduating was, as I mentioned, in information architecture and content management systems, and looking at how we can make it simple for users to find their way on a website, to find what they need. This took me on a journey into application development, system deliveries, mobile applications, agile deliveries. And I have to admit, I was very, very excited about how people interacted with all sorts of technology. And now it's led me to digital transformation and service design. And I'm interested in how people adopt new tools or services through curiosity. So I started reading on how curiosity helps change. And this was useful in my work and why I'm here to talk to you about keeping your curious edge. So curiosity has long been seen, I suppose, in two opposing forces. One of inquisitiveness, intelligence, and an interest in the world, whilst on the other hand, associated with that of the fear of unknown, risk, and penalties. And from the moment we're born, we're either reveling in our curious natures or we learn that there is a risk of being curious. So, how have we learned what curiosity is, and how has our language defined our own interpretation of what we think being curious is? And if we look at how neuroscience and behavioral scientists say about curiosity, it seems our curiosity changes with age. So can we keep our curiosity alive in the face of experience? Let me introduce you to what I'll be talking to you about. I've kept it simple. First of all, what is curiosity? Why should we be curious? And last but not least, how do we stay curious? And how do we keep our curiosity alive? So, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's an eager wish to learn or know something. And in my view, we seem to have an odd relationship with curiosity. On one hand, we have idioms such as, curiosity killed a cat and die from curiosity. And on the other hand, we have there are no foolish questions and curiosity is the wick of learning. Two opposite ways of looking at curiosity completely, I would say. The original expression for curiosity kills a cat was actually care kills the cat, where care was used to describe worry or sorrow. That original expression was first recorded in 1598 in Ben Jonson's play Every Man in His Humour. The current expression with curiosity is much newer, and the earliest record can be found in 1898 in the Galveston Daily News. Curiosity killed the cat, but it came back. Later changes to this of satisfaction brought it back, made it much more clearer. And we see it in popular music and, of course, in Stephen King's 1977 horror novel, The Shining, which includes the following line: "Curiosity killed the cat, my dear Red Rum. Red Rum, my dear. Satisfaction brought him back." So if you look at how some people viewed curiosity, such as Albert Einstein, who said about himself that he was neither very clever nor very intelligent, but just merely very, very curious. Well, I would say it took him very, very far just being curious. So, what is the chemistry of curiosity? Curiosity urges you to explore the unknown, gain information, and delve past beyond boundaries. Many scientists consider curiosity an urge that needs to be satisfied, much like hunger. Curious minds display increased activity in the hippocampus, which is involved in the creation of memories. We have a circuit in our brain that literally encourages us to do things that are rewarding. It lights up when we find a way to get more sweets, more rewards, and that feeling of reward creates in our brain a behavior that wants to be repeated. And hey, why not? If you're getting sweets, you want more of it. It leads you to just repeat that behavior. So reward pathways naturally occur in the brain, and these are created when the body has a dopamine or a serotonin releasing experience. Literally, pathways are forged in the brain when we do activities that release these chemicals. And so, well, what happens with age to these pathways? So as children, we're innately born curious about our world. Already reward pathways have started forming from birth, and this is one of the reasons why as parents we're always thinking of ways how we can keep our children from putting anything they can find in their mouth. We all know about keeping small items well out of the way of small children. Children are filled with energy that moves them to question everything, to want to touch everything, and even try to eat anything that comes in their orbit. As parents and adults, we have to let our children be curious whilst at the same time keeping them safe. We're obligated to encourage this curiosity to grow, continue and develop in a positive and intellectual way, yet teach them to not be so curious that they endanger themselves. However, as we get older, it seems that apparently we lose our curiosity. A paper published in Neuroscience and Behavioral Sciences positions that aging is associated with a decline in curiosity, and that a way of adaptive aging is through maintaining curiosity. The paper proposes that curiosity plays an important part in maintaining cognitive function, mental health, and physical health in older adults. It identified the dopaminergic reward system and the noradrenergic systems as the key brain systems implicated in curiosity processing and adaptive aging. So, by bringing together broad but sparse neuroscientific and psychological literature on curiosity and related concepts such as novelty seeking in older adults, they proposed that curiosity, although it declines with age, plays an important role in maintaining cognitive function, mental health, and physical health in older adults. So, why should we be curious? Why should we not just accept that as we mature, we gain experience, and therefore we don't need to be as curious as we once were as children? I see, of course, every reason to stay curious and find ways to reward our own curiosity, because curiosity, when penalized, can result in that reward pathway not being created. This leads to an almost fear of fulfilling curiosity. And indeed, as we mature into adulthood, our experiences teaches us whether we can ask as many questions as we'd really like to, whether we can take risks, because last time it didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to. And actually, some even get to the point where it is all old hat. But is it? Here comes the power of what if. Actually, what if it is not old hat? What if we took that risk? And what if we asked that extra question? Where can what if take us? If we look back at history, many innovations were found upon that one extra question being asked. So, for example, the switch to paper currency. It's not like money did not already exist. It did in the form of precious metals, coins, and raw materials like livestock or vegetables. Yet the inception of paper money created a bold new era, a world in which currency could purchase goods and services despite having no intrinsic value in itself. Imagine if we had just thought then, what is the point of paper to exchange things with? This ushered in global economics and internal monetary regulation, and not just that, but led the way for credit cards and electronic banking. And of course, you can't talk about curiosity or innovation without talking about the electric light. Another great example is just literally that. It didn't appear overnight. No, this was years of effort by inventors such as Humphrey Davy, Warren de la Rue, Joseph Wilson Swan, and Thomas Edison, of course. This incremental approach to innovation freed us from near total reliance on daylight. And that is the most important part of this, the incremental approach to innovation. Another one, I just have to talk about another one, this one, microscopes, because they have been around since 700 BCE, used first of all by the Assyrians. They became far more well known in the 13th century, and by 1590 they were well on their way. Yet, when you look at this picture, you would never have thought that we'd be using this today. So we have come so far. And that was back, first of all, in 700 BCE. So the power of curiosity is absolutely imperative in service design, because if we look at microscopes, we would never have thought, like I said, we'd be where we are with them today, back in 15th century or the 13th or in 700. So Mark Stickton, the guru of service design thinking, says that designers possess more than an ability to style products. They are practitioners of an applied process of creative skills, identifying problems, researching, analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing, and then conceptualizing, testing, and communicating solutions. So why is curiosity so important in design? Because services are not tangible or standardized goods that can be stored away in an inventory. Instead, services created through an interaction between a service provider and a customer. Basically, being curious helps us learn, helps us iterate, and every time we iterate, we're actually innovating. So how do we keep our curiosity alive? Because not only does it help us design better services for people, but more importantly, helps us to age adaptively and keep us learning and ultimately makes us feel excited and happy. So the answer to that, how do we keep our curiosity alive? First of all, I think it's key that we have a safe environment to learn new things and feel free to be curious. Our environments play a key role in our development. In surroundings where our users can be open and where we actually listen to them, that's when we can achieve the highest potential. There is no wrong answer when exploring ideas. Creating such an environment begins with kindness, and there is no such thing as judgment in a safe environment. Being in a safe environment means you can be free and say what you really think. Secondly, trying new things. Curiosity leads us to do new things, but as we get older, we become more experienced, and the more experienced we become, the more it's true that you've done it before. Take something as simple as cycling or skiing, for example. When we first learn it, there is a sense of wonder and a sense of achievement as we get better and faster at it. However, trying new things doesn't need to stop even when we're experienced at something. Cycling in a new area or going to ski on a new run will trigger that feeling of wonder and a sense of achievement, which will make you feel excited after you've done it. The more you feed this reward pathway in your brain, the more you will seek new things out. In the same way, small iterations of change can help us learn things whilst feeling safe, especially as we get older, where experience has taught us exactly what is safe and what is not safe. A small change can excite us, keep us safe, and leave us with a feeling of achievement. So the third thing is encourage questioning. As children, when we were small, we would ask so many questions. Knowing why to everything was almost our reason for living. As we grew up, for some reason, we learned to control our curiosity, but we don't have to. We can still wonder and ask questions. We've never been in a better position than now to understand things, and these questions will lead to answers that we may never have thought of had we not asked them. As I said right at the beginning, microscopes were not built in a day. Last but not least, rewarding innovation. It's important to reward new ideas, new attempts, and new innovations. Why? Because rewarding ourselves for having been curious will allow us to continue to be curious. And as children, we used to innovate all the time. When we were kids and we couldn't find our Superman outfit, we'd grab a towel and use it as a cape. When we can't find our lightsaber, we go create one from a cardboard and paint it to look like one. And what did our parents do? They encouraged us and told us that we were geniuses. We need to remember that kindness and give it back to ourselves, because as we get older, we need to be able to reward our own curiosity for adjusting, for creating, for learning, and for innovating. Because even a simple, tiny change is innovation, and that is a result of curiosity, which, in my opinion, deserves reward. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that just gorgeous message of just like kindness and keeping ourselves happy, and just wonderful, Tava. I just loved it. I think that's something that, you know, we often, like you said, forget to continue doing. We teach ourselves not to remain curious. And yeah, just the idea of rewarding that behavior is just wonderful. So thank you so much. Really enjoyed that talk.
Yes, thank you so much. Great to hear some of the, well, first of all, curiosity, getting back into what it is we're exploring today, getting into the fundamentals of curiosity. And yeah, delivered so well. So really, really enjoyed that. Tell you what, we're going to bring you back in at the end in about 20 minutes time, just for a little bit of a closing discussion. So really, really appreciate you preparing that talk today and being curious and reaching out and saying, yes, how can I get involved? And yeah, so thank you so much for that. Great. Roisin, we're going to go over to the global keynote. It's just gone 2:30 at this point in time. The global keynote is just about to air across all the locations. So we will follow that as well. And it's going to be an incredible talk by Cassini Nazir. I'm just going to bring up some information on Cassini. Here we are. Cassini actually is well respected and renowned in the world of information architecture, and his previous talk last year actually created the whole concept of curiosity as a theme this year. This talk is pre-recorded and it's been made available exclusively to all of the locations, so it's not available online at the moment, but it is available just to the broadcasters of today's events. It's a 20-minute talk. It's very well produced, very insightful. So we will gather at the end of this talk for a little panel discussion, and then we'll cross over to Zurich for a live Q&A with Cassini. We'll do some local commentary, but we'll explain all that when we get a little bit closer to the top of the hour. So at this point, we will cross over to Cassini and we will have a listen to the talk.
Wonderful.
Hello, information architects and designers. Today is the 10th annual World Information Architecture Day. My name is Cassini Nazir. I'm a designer of conversations, curricula, and interfaces. Well, there's no easy way to say it. We have a problem with information. Information has been harnessed at an unprecedented scale in recent years to foster confusion, harm, and chaos in our world. The English word pandemic means all people. Many digital information systems created in the last decade have created digital pandemics that, at their present trajectory, would affect a global population. And like our health pandemic, many problems in our information pandemic are somewhat predictable, but hard to see at their outset, increasingly noticeable and perceivable with time, and grow quickly to an insurmountable scale, inevitably creating massive disruption. What both have in common is that they start out small. Not so long ago, we were excited about the convergence of information on the small screen. We designed for screens this size. Designing for something that small gives you an illusion of control. That illusion of control has, over time, created a thorny and tangled mess. Thanks to Abby Covert and many others, information architects, strategists, and design professionals have learned how to transform a mess into information. But what's information made of anyway? Well, iron, foam, and tin. What'd you expect? But there's also a deeply troubling problem. Hidden inside information are our deeply held beliefs that give us a firm notion. We tend to make up our minds too quickly, holding on to ideas that are often incomplete, inaccurate, wrong, or harmful. And the worst part is, we don't even realize it. The more firmly we hold on to our notions, the greater the illusion that we possess knowledge. And in turn, we avoid seeking out new or additional information, all the while forgetting that there are other things out there waiting to be explored. What things could we make with them? So, in order to avoid a firm notion, we must go back to that original mess and seek out an icy suitor: curiosity. This video will give you a first orientation to a strange, fascinating, and fragile phenomenon: being curious. You and I will explore what curiosity is, ways we can be more curious, and if possible, how we might invite others to be curious. Why? Well, first, curiosity is powerful. It can enhance intelligence and increase perseverance. Being curious propels us to deeper engagement, superior performance, and more meaningful goals. Curiosity can also bring awareness and mindfulness. It reminds us of things we've forgotten, helps us to see familiar things with fresh eyes, and invites us to explore new things. Curiosity also initiates access to new or different ideas. Those ideas don't come fully formed, of course. We have to allow an abundant margin of time for our curiosity to give form to meaning. Curiosity is often a product of boredom. If we do give margins of time, we're rewarded when our ideas take shape and walk on their own.
Hey! Whew!
Without that margin of time, our ideas lose balance and coherence. If we don't see our curiosity to its end, we may form incomplete mental models. But what is curiosity anyway? Well, curiosity is commonly defined as the recognition, pursuit, and desire to explore novel, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous events. It's a feeling of interest in a situation where potential exists for learning. We exhibit a level of patience and want to see what happens. Curiosity is like table salt. Both salt and curiosity can add flavor to our lives. Salt is essential for life in general, so too, I would argue, is being curious. Salt placed in a cut causes pain. Curiosity has the potential to cause us pain or difficulty. We used salt to help us tell time, so too we commission our curiosity to help us pass time in moments of boredom. Salt preserves food. Curiosity, in the right context, can preserve our lives by stretching our minds. And perhaps most important for our discussion, like salt, curiosity is something we humans can naturally produce. The question is how? Curiosity manifests as an emotion, a way of thinking, a behavior, and an aperture. Each gives us a different avenue to curiosity. Emotions are complex. Psychologists propose anywhere from 3 to 11 foundational emotions. Robert Plutchik developed the Wheel of Emotions, a visual framework to describe human emotions. In it, 8 basic emotion dimensions allow at least 24 emotion combinations. Although visually simple, The model posits that emotions are the result of complex sequences of events. Plutchik's approach may appeal to you as an information architect because it provides a semantically consistent set of distinct emotions, a clear organizational structure, and a standard set of names, all characteristics of good IA. Much like colors on a color wheel, where colors can be combined to form different colors, basic emotions combine to form other emotions. And emotions can be organized by how often we feel them. Curiosity is a sometimes felt emotion. Which of these emotions do you think combine to yield curiosity? If you guess trust and surprise, give yourself a pat on the back. Trust means that curiosity manifests as a collective process, requiring a level of vulnerability among people. Surprise forces us to stop, reorient, and recalibrate. Note that both emotions, trust and surprise, are needed to cultivate the emotion of curiosity. So what's the opposite of curiosity? Cynicism, which is a combination of disgust and anticipation. Now, I don't know about you, but we had a lot of that in 2020, didn't we? Want your team to be more curious? Cultivate trust, give them support, and then change up routines every so often to create positive surprises. Want to be more curious yourself? Surprises are all around us, waiting to be discovered. The world isn't lacking in wonders. We are often lacking a sense of wonder. So, change your routines. Our environment shapes so much of our behavior. A pre-COVID study found that we've spent most of our day in just a few locations where it becomes easy to form complex routines and a myriad of habits, not all of them good. So next time you drive home, take a completely different route. Or make a plan to introduce yourself to new things. With each new year, a good friend of mine plans to explore new things weekly. Watch 52 new documentaries or read 52 new books. Curiosity enlists a seldom used punctuation mark. Most of her thoughts end with a period and not a question. Our default mode is to seek answers and not questions. This can unwittingly lead us to ask only questions for which we know the answer. Now, that's fine in a world that doesn't change much, but as the world becomes more complex and dynamic, and as the rate of change increases, the value of answers decreases and the value of questions increases. What's the worst thing you can do with the difficult question? Answer it too quickly. Questions activate curiosity, and designers are in the practice of keeping journals. So, begin a curiosity journal. A few guides. Get a pocket-sized journal, one that you can take out and jot things down. Use the first page to introduce your journal. Every page after that should have only questions. And finally, have fun. You can sketch note your questions. Now, somebody might have the idea to build a curiosity journal app. Please don't. Curiosity is fragile. The slightest interruption, and it disappears. A journal like this lets questions linger longer. You can apply this idea at work. The tone of a meeting is easily changed by making agenda items questions instead of declarations. On our website, we have a few more ideas to help explore ways of thinking. We'll even teach you how to play question tennis. Richard Warman, who coined the term information architect, reminds us to not forget the quest in our questions. Answering tough questions often demand action and persistence. Patricia Moore, one of the founders of Universal Design, traveled to 100 cities across America and Canada pretending to be 85 years old.
Now, when I was 85, I was 26. And no, I am not drunk.
Moore wore her grandmother's clothes, she put on uncomfortable shoes that made walking difficult, plugged her ears to distort her hearing, and wore thick glasses that blurred her vision.
If I could be an elder, perhaps I could then speak about the needs of older people everywhere as consumers.
This experience helped more understand more intimately how difficult the world can be to navigate as an elder, and also how to better design for our elders.
I have never designed for what a person can't do. And so the focus is always on their capacity, their ability. What are they able to manage? And then, with that view, how can we make the situation better?
Now, you don't have to go to the lengths that Patricia Moore did, but you can use curiosity to put on the mantle of understanding. Curiosity teaches us to look with 4 eyes, our own and others unlike us. Now, how do you summon curiosity in your design practice to begin to understand the experience of others? Run an empathy immersion workshop. These workshops force you to do what Patricia Moore did. Step out of your shoes and into that of another person. Of course, we can't fully understand others' experiences, but we can certainly better understand them. Curiosity, when combined with empathy, can yield transformative insights. Curiosity is about the demand and supply of information and experiences. Economist and psychologist George Lowenstein described this as the information gap. Curiosity arises when there's a gap between what we know and what we want to know. Lowenstein is describing a sort of mental itch. We metaphorically scratch that itch by gathering new information. The itch of curiosity follows a bell curve. We're interested when we know a little about something, piquing our curiosity, but not too much, because we're still uncertain about the answer. And once the itch of curiosity has been scratched, the desire for new information is gone. Many websites use a scratch the itch model to provide immediate gratification. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the only way to satisfy curiosity. Another way to think of curiosity is as an aperture. Light travels through a camera aperture. Any photographer knows that the aperture is only half the story. The length of time this light spends through the aperture is equally important. Photographers call this shutter speed. Like images, our ideas and understanding can be underexposed, not letting enough light in to clearly see the information. As our aperture of curiosity closes and we reduce our desire to know, we have to continually renew it through time. How do we do that? Well, there's an extremely elegant solution. One of the most powerful words for this is the word else. What else? How else? Who else? Why else? Let's try something. Say out loud the first word that comes to your mind when I say this. Table. Did you say chair? Most people say that as their first response. We are often curious in very predictable ways. Use the word else to be more curious and in unpredictable ways. What else comes to mind when I say table? What else? What else? What else? Information can convince us that what we see is all there is. Curiosity helps us ask, is there more? An unfortunate side effect of well-designed information architecture is that it can sometimes give us answers before we've even had time to ask the questions. Perhaps our interfaces should also help us generate better questions. So we explored 4 avenues to curiosity: our emotions, ways of thinking, behavior, and the aperture of curiosity. Now, you may have asked yourself at some point, how curious are you? We should really ask ourselves, how are you curious? Todd Kashdan and his colleagues discovered that curiosity is multi-dimensional. Their research discovered 5 distinct dimensions of curiosity called the 5-dimensional curiosity scale. These 5 dimensions are joyous exploration, the recognition and desire to seek out new knowledge and information, and the subsequent joy of learning, deprivation sensitivity, and emotional curiosity driven more by tension and hard labor than by joy. This kind of curiosity enjoys pondering complex ideas, solving difficult problems, and striving to diminish gaps in knowledge. Stress tolerance, the willingness to embrace the stress and ambiguity of exploring new, mysterious, or risky experiences. Social curiosity, the desire to know what other people are thinking and doing by listening to, talking, and socializing with other people. And thrill-seeking, the willingness to take physical, social, and financial risks in order to acquire new experiences. Now, we all have some element of each of these 5 dimensions in our personality. Kashtan's 5-dimensional scale helps us understand the dimensions of curiosity. But not everyone's curious about the same things in the same ways, so Kashtan identified these 4 distinct types of curious people. The fascinated, people with inquisitive minds who are social, enthusiastic, who love to be in the know, and who thrive on the unpredictable and see life as an adventure. Problem solvers, who are hardworking individuals with core value of independence, who love to learn while working relentlessly at problems they feel must be solved. Empathizers, who love to understand why people do what they do. Empathizers often prefer to observe what's going on around them instead of participating. Avoiders, who demonstrate little curiosity and confidence. They shy away from things they don't know or understand. They avoid confrontation when possible and lack understanding of their emotional life. What kind of curious are you? Want to find out? Take a curiosity quiz and discover what kind of curious you are. Designing in the 21st century can be both exasperating and exhilarating. More of our world in the 21st century has been shaped by our consumer desires and demands, our politics, our differences, and our fears than by our curiosity. We are, after all, still living in the digital Stone Age. But regardless of what age we live in, information will always be important. So too will information architecture. After all, information architecture has always been about the oohs and the ahs, finding things we were looking for, and discovering things we weren't.
Ooh.
How do you embed curiosity in experiences you're designing? Well, curiosity follows a very simple pattern. You, the designer, extend an invitation to someone to be curious. That invitation can be accepted or rejected or ignored. Most invitations require us to act or respond in some way. There's then an inflection point where we're meaningfully and satisfyingly rewarded for taking action on curiosity. See if you can find that pattern in this video.
Scan my boarding pass. Oh.
Curiosity offers few straight lines. Now, I've shown you Legos for a reason, and not just because I still enjoy playing with them. Maybe your Lego activity starts like mine, with 2 simple questions. What shall we build? And how shall we build it? These are good questions for curious designers. As mentioned earlier, we are living in the digital Stone Age. And much like the first Stone Age, our digital Stone Age will pass. But the first Stone Age didn't end because they ran out of stones. It ended because they found something better. Engage your curiosity. What future shall we build?
What a wonderful talk. Roisin, that is it. We're going to bring our speakers back in at this point. Let's bring Radu, Natalie, Tiba, and Flavian. We'll bring you in as well. Let's bring all of our hosts and guests today. So we're going to cross over to Zurich for the main event. They're a few minutes behind us, so we'll cross over some live Q&A. If anyone does have any questions for Cassini, please ask it on Slido or put it into the chat here on YouTube. We'll make sure that they are directed over to Cassini, and he'll be able to answer those live. So thoughts, first of all, curiosity. Have we been more curious? Have we changed some of our opinions today? This is such a diverse sort of angle we've taken today, many different angles into curiosity. So maybe first of all, start at the start. Natalie, how have you enjoyed our talks today? Anything you're taking away?
There's so much more to learn and so much more to read up on. So I'm going to be busy for this whole entire how long this lockdown thing is going on. Yeah, so I'm just busy. Just talk to me in 3 years again.
I think that's really it. There is so much to learn, isn't there? It's tipping the iceberg. What about yourself, Radu? Anything you're going to take away from our wonderful talks?
Well, I think it's quite easy. We need to understand that when you open a door, you end up revealing 20, 30 other doors, right? So
yeah.
Well, you have to kind of be careful which one you pick as well. So I think I can get enthusiastically quite quickly, right? So sometimes I have to hit the brakes a bit and step back and look at the options I have and make a deliberate decision. So I think this is one of the things I realized lately is that you have to be a bit more deliberate about what you do. Sometimes, but sometimes you can just go with the flow and see what happens. So it really depends.
I like that analogy. It's opening doors. We don't really know what we're going to find when we do open them, isn't it? And that is curiosity, is just being willing to open those doors, get some fresh perspectives in. Taiba, what about yourself? Anything that you're going to take away from today's talks?
Definitely. I mean, so much to take away from today's talks. But I guess one of the things that I'm going to try and figure out is how do you get people to be curious if they have closed that? And what's caused that, and how do you open that back up again? I think that will really help me in my workplace. So yeah.
Any thoughts on that from the panel? How do we keep people curious? How do we create how do we open or create that curiosity in people who are closed? Have we experienced anything like that before? Have we any techniques that we can use?
I think you just invite people in and structure and logical sense is always the one that piques people's interest. So every time we go somewhere and we have to make a decision, if that decision will affect us in a bad way, chances are we will not do that thing again because it's bad for us. So sometimes we just need to go and try and find out what happened, what bad experiences people had, and try and explore that avenue, and then try and rectify the issues and make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes, because it is something we do as an industry quite a lot, is we keep repeating. We see a pattern somewhere and then we repeat that pattern without asking the questions we should ask. So
I like to throw people curveballs. There's this thing of people have a conversation, everybody's comfortable in what they're saying, and then you bring something out from a totally different topic or a different angle they didn't expect. And at that moment, the curiosity normally gets piqued because they're like, whoa, what's going on now, right? And then they're starting to okay, now I need to know what's going on, of inviting them into the journey. But yeah, so that's what I like to do, is I like to throw people off.
So almost like having a call to action somewhere on a website saying, do not click this. Whatever you do, do not click this.
That's definitely one way.
I mean, I think even in corporate conversation, right, there's a way how you have to converse with people. But sometimes you bring in this oddball conversation in, and first they look at you like you're crazy. Then they get over that, but then they start engaging with you because suddenly it's like, whoa, there's a different way of talking to this person, right? I think it's always about putting people a little bit in off balance to get them to be curious, to engage differently and re-look at things. That's what I do.
I think it's I like that. I really like that, Natalie, about that, invitation to a journey. I like that a lot, because I think that's, if you open that door, Radu, as you said, where can that journey lead to? So I think that's a really good way. And also, like you said, just being different can invite people to think in different ways too. So absolutely.
No, it is scary, right? I mean, there is that thing of when you bring some curveball or something different and people just look at you, you do need to be comfortable with your own discomfort at that moment and help them to overcome that with you to open that journey up. So I do think it is not the easiest way, because
and what Cassini said about being vulnerable, isn't it? When you are uncomfortable slightly and acknowledging that as well, that you're uncomfortable, they're also on that same journey with you.
Right on.
I would like to maybe see what questions we have on our talks today. So, Roshan, do we have any questions that we could go back to across our three speakers that we have got from maybe YouTube? There's a lot of great content that came in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one question that came through during Natalie's talk was from Ben Dude Skate. I'm going to put it up here because it's quite a long one. But essentially, UX design is about creating empathy with your users. But I wonder if one can truly achieve empathy when trying to personify a different cultural paradigm from your own. So maybe we can start with Natalie with a response maybe to that, and then maybe open it up to the others if they have any thoughts.
So first, Ben Dude, let's just get some whiskey after all of this and just talk about this, because it goes really deep and meta in this. Here's the thing is, you will never, ever have the same experience as anyone else. Just not possible. Doesn't matter if it's a different culture, if it's same culture, not possible. So I don't think we even need to try that. And what I found more and more in my career is my job is not to be the other person, but my job is to open the door for the other person to be heard and be able to make sure that I can take this information and work with the person or the groups to build that experience, right? So I often think almost like now I'm becoming like more a medium than actually a designer, because I'm just opening the doors for other groups. And if you see it from that standpoint, then you don't have to worry about if you can ever really empathize with another person. You can always empathize that they are different. You can always empathize with their uniqueness. You just need to figure out how to not then, when you start designing, impose your own view on it, but check in your own views and let the other person's point of view come out. And trust me, I have designed things which look terrible. And I'm just like, I would never ever want to use it, but the end user loves it, right? So it is kind of like, who am I to say that it has to look the way what my design aesthetic says, because I'm not the goal here. I'm not the end user. And I think that is kind of where it gets tricky, because I have to really remove, like, I don't like tax accounting systems. They're really ugly design. I want to have it look different. I have to check my ego here. It's not about making the coolest thing. So that would be my thing with empathy and cross-cultural paradigms and thinking about that.
Amazing. I'll just open it up to either Radu or Teva, if either of you have any thoughts on that question or any feedback.
I think being a medium, it's a perfect description. I think it just encapsulates everything we should be aspiring to become and do, as well as professionals. So I love that analogy.
And I completely agree with you as well, Natalie. And something else that stuck with me from Cassini's talk, and you brought that to life as well, is the fact that, you're not designing for you. So in that talk where I think it was Patricia who was talking about, who dressed herself as an 85-year-old, she's not designing for herself. It's looking at it from, the perspective of the user. And so therefore, my experience will never be the same, even if we were twins, it would still not be the same.
Yep.
That was I have to go and dig out that original talk. Very, very insightful. And what I took away is that essentially designing for what people cannot do is quite interesting. We always design for what people can do, what we want them to do, but what can't they do. I think that was really, really insightful. Excellent. Any other questions that came through on our feeds there?
We have nothing here from YouTube, and I'm not sure whether Flavian has been checking the Twitter feeds here, but I haven't seen anything coming through myself. So I'd say we can probably leave it there. Obviously, if there's more questions coming through, we can float those out.
I think so. I think so. We will, at this point, maybe just tee up the live Q&A, which is underway. So we're going to join that in progress. We'll keep everyone on here just for additional commentary. We'll listen in for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then we will take this to a close. And networking, we do have some fun networking. And of course, we have winners. We're going to announce the winners of our Twitter giveaways, I know. So let's see if technology works for us. This is a first. We're going to connect into a Zoom, which is in progress. And hopefully this will play into the stream.
Where you're learning less and less about more and more. And you know, as you go into, perhaps in your careers, as you go into management, you're even sort of learning, in some cases, this isn't generally true, but in some cases you're learning less and less about less and less. You're just getting the headlines. And so you're translating a tremendous amount of information and taking action on it. And it's not that it's that you're not curious, you're just, time is an important factor to curiosity and having it. And the way that we've structured our societies, at least I can speak about America and to a lesser degree my homeland, which is Trinidad, that we've structured our societies in a way where time, we don't have much margins of time in which to do that. We have sort of a tremendous amount of anxiety about time, and almost feel like there's a pressure to not just use our time wisely, but also effectively. Curiosity is not very effective. You know, it's not an efficient system in which we find things. It's very much a messy system in which we don't know what's next, which is the excitement to me of curiosity. But we can schedule time, you know, of just schedule. If our society is structured that way, we can put time on our calendar that says, I'm going to allow my curiosity to roam for this next hour. And it's wonderful for me at the end of the day to do that, because it's satisfying, it's meaningful, and it allows me to reconnect some of what's happened during the day as well. So things that I've heard or resources that folks have mentioned, oftentimes the last hour of the day or the last 30 minutes of the day, I will do just pure curiosity exploration.
We got a first question from the attendees, from Nabil Talman from Nantes in France. He's asking, I believe that the more you are curious, the more you can face the world, handle information, and build a better future, at least for ourselves. So is curiosity a path that should be taken by everybody, especially today? I mean, it's not an option anymore.
Wow. I think it is a path that's taken, and I like that metaphor, Nabil. I think that is an accurate metaphor. We can often stumble from that path. If it's about walking down the path, that there's a time factor there. It's important, but it's also many paths. I would use the plural there and add an S to that. It's paths that are not linear by any stretch of the imagination. They wind, they curve, they intersect. You know, if you imagine an M.C. Escher drawing, the path goes upside down at certain points as well with curiosity, because it changes our mindset. And I think that curiosity really leads to a better imagination. One of the things that I left out of the talk that I just couldn't weave in was a notion that I've been hearing more and more, that I don't know if it's accurate, but there are some signals that we seem to be moving into an imagination age, where our imaginations are more important to us because of what technology affords us and the problems that we're facing. And I think curiosity is a way to light the imagination in ways that are where you have massive return on investment with curiosity. I'll just give one quick example. I shouldn't make a statement like that without giving a specific example. But there's a field that's been around for some time, biomimesis or biomimicry. Industrial designers are very familiar with this notion of taking from nature, learning from nature, and building that into physical objects. And in the digital world, we don't really do that. I teach interaction design, and there's very few interaction programs that have a strong biomimicry class, if it's even mentioned, or talking about that. And I think curiosity is always afforded by the things around us. And I think that option is always there to sort of circle back to Nabil's question. It's just, we just have to grasp for it.
Another question from the attendees, I'm not sure who it is because it's not a full name. How has teaching your design students affected your own curiosity?
Oh boy, that is a wonderful question. Thank you to whomever that was who asked that question. I'm a better person because of my students' curiosity. I think I live vicariously through their own curiosity. Seeing somebody learn something that you learned ages ago is wonderful. To see them sort of come to this realization of how these objects exist and are situated in the world. And it helps me to have an appreciation of learning. I love to learn, but I think that being around learners makes curiosity a safe place to be. There are places, even in educational systems, where curiosity is not rewarded. There are workplaces where curiosity is not rewarded, and some of us may even have felt that in our families that may have been the case as well. But I think that vicariously sort of living through the experiences of learners has been invigorating for me. I teach at the University of North Texas. I taught at the University of Texas at Dallas, and at both places I've been, and also at Southern Methodist University for a short time, and at all places, the learners there, I think I've learned a tremendous amount from the students and their mindsets. The other thing is that I think the millennials get kind of a bad rap. At least here in America, they get a bit of a bad rap, and it's learning in a very different way that we're not accustomed to, and it's forced us to reassess as educators, and I view it as a wonderful challenge.
In your typology, or in the typology of curious people that you mentioned in the talk, you also have those people who like to take risks, to sort of go a bit beyond their boundaries. But maybe you can say something about risk and about the contrary you were just mentioning about creating safe places and probably also trust.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, risk is inherent in design, and it's inherent because anytime we imagine in our brains something that we will bring about in the world, we're taking a risk when that thing comes about, and it's inherent in the work that we do. And in many businesses and in many educational systems, that one mindset is to reduce the amount of risk. I think that connection between risk and curiosity is really critical, quite honestly. I'm not the kinds of risk taker. I'm not the financial risk taker. I'm not the physical risk taker. I'm sort of the intellectual risk taker. It's why I love language and why I've learned a couple of different languages. But I think those who take risks are those who break new ground. Those are the folks who are going to take us to Mars. Those are the folks who, when they looked at an egg, whoever was the first human that looked at an egg and said, I'd like to try eating that, right? changed forever our ways of consuming food. You know, those risk takers, we have a tremendous amount of gratitude towards them. But then we also have to recognize that those risk takers, there are adverse side effects sometimes to risk as well, and we have to thank them for being willing to tolerate that for us on our behalf. Just one additional component to that, and then I'll be quiet. But the additional component there is that I think risk teaches us that curiosity is a social phenomenon. And it's always been a social phenomenon that if one person in our community takes a risk, we take a cue from that based on what has happened to that individual. If the risk has been rewarded, we too might follow. If the risk hasn't been rewarded, we might never try that thing again. And so curiosity has a hugely social component to it that is often overlooked. And I think here today, curiosity is clearly a social component. It's around the globe right now, and I think that I just want to recognize that as an important contribution.
Thank you. Another question from one of our attendees, actually from Switzerland, Lara Portman, who's asking, would you say that curiosity is only or always good, or is there also a risk of romanticizing curiosity? And she also thanks you for a wonderful talk.
So the romanticizing curiosity, yes. You know, I just want to add that I did that. in my talk, I think I romanticized curiosity, and there's a wonderful article from Sundar Sukhai, who was at Srishti University in India, on exactly that. The reason why I'm pointing to it rather than talking about points in it is that I can't remember all of the points from Sundar's article, but it's hugely important. Curiosity is not a silver bullet. As I mentioned, it's inefficient. It is it can be detrimental. I will say this: when I began looking at curiosity, important ideas will often embed themselves in world religions. And what's important to a culture will often embed itself inside the way that culture has organized itself around things to be worshipped. And in no culture that I was able to find is there a god of curiosity, which I think is interesting, that we will oftentimes externalize things that we think are important and put them into, we'll deify them into a god or goddess to be worshipped. And curiosity, again, as far as I can see, is not an externalized deity. It's something that we think is inherent. My take on that situation is that we as humans must recognize that curiosity is something that's very human. The story of Pandora, for example, in the Greek myths, talks about curiosity as well. In some cases, it's been romanticized, but then in others, it's also been a way to say, don't be curious. Some of us grew up in families where curiosity was punished because perhaps that risk-taking component. And I think just to bring it back around, perhaps there's a balance there that has to be struck, that each individual must find for themselves, that has to be struck. I don't know how to guide you on that, but you know that's for each individual to work out with fear and trembling, to use the Kierkegaard phrase.
We have another question from Rada Kandil from Egypt. She says, as you were mentioning, or as you mentioned, curiosity is very fragile. How can you measure curiosity? How can you deal with intangible feelings, or how do you know it is high or low for the person?
That's a great question. Yeah, it is very fragile, and it's something that if you think about a fragile object, you don't run with the fragile object. Well, let me say this: you shouldn't run with the fragile object. You know, if I were to take that glass head behind me and run with it, I'd probably be at risk of breaking it. And the metaphor there is that perhaps curiosity makes it okay for us to go slower. Measuring curiosity is a wonderful question for which I'm not qualified to answer. And I think others, Todd Kashdan, who I mentioned in the talk and whose work is linked to on the website, has taken efforts to measure curiosity. There are other curiosity scales that are out there. But I want to use that question, how can you measure curiosity, to maybe interject something. Andrea, I'm going to ask you to help me out here. There's three words that I think universally maybe we're uncomfortable with, and in English it's the words "I don't know." If we were to say "I don't know" angrily, I'm going to ask you to just play act here alongside me. This is a moment in the day where we both make a fool of ourselves. If I were to say the words "I don't know" to me angrily, how would you respond?
I don't know, leave me alone.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's how I would say it. I don't know, right? Notice it's very short. And if I were to ask you to say, I don't know, in a curious way, right? If the emotion inside of you was curiosity, how would you say I don't know?
Can you say that again? I was distracted by the
I'm sorry.
questions coming in.
So if I were to say now, in this time around, I want you to try to say that same phrase, I don't know, but as if it was coming from a place of curiosity, how would you say it?
I don't know.
Notice just the length of time, right? I don't know was very short. I'm angry, I just want to get it over with, let's move on. The I don't know of curiosity is even in verbally when we say it. I don't know if this is true globally, but I suspect it might be, that when we say things, I don't know, in a curious way, it's opening up space for us. And if it's possible for us to maybe even change the way that we talk about things, curiosity gives us space to sort of lengthen the time. And that's why I talked about the aperture of curiosity. If we can let it just be open, the aperture, the notion a little bit longer, I think that's important. So I don't know how best to measure it, but perhaps if we just look at it from a time factor, maybe that's one way that we could. And just to give it allow it a little bit more time to grow, blossom, and get a little bit more sunshine. With the intangible feelings, I'll just add one last thing, because I love this question. There's I think he was a mathematician whose name I will remember here in a moment, Michael Polanyi, who talked about tacit knowing, the idea that we know more than we can say. My father, when I was younger, was teaching me how to do something mechanical, and I was not good at it. And he used very few words to express this, but he was, in a very Trinidadian accent, he said, "You do so, and then you do so," right? And I had no idea what he was talking about. How do I turn this mechanical thing in the ways that he was saying it? And what's visible there is that we have a tacit knowledge that we sometimes can't express. We know things, but we don't have the words to express them sometimes. Oftentimes we don't even know the why behind it. But I think curiosity, we have to be curious about ourselves too. We don't know ourselves as well as we should. And I think that can also be extended to our relationships, but I'll leave that for maybe another question. I've talked too long, I feel, on that question, but it was a great question.
Well, concerning time, I think there's another question that sort of goes in that direction. It's by Kev OC, who I assume could be from Dublin, asking, much of the focus is on creating a safe place to explore curiosity. How is curiosity expressed and explored in stressful situations?
That is a great question. I don't know enough about. That's something that I would love to explore more. I have to confess, I don't know enough about it. I think the ways we're curious, the 5-dimensional curiosity scale, there are some who, in the thrill seeking, what would be stressful for me would be enjoyment for others. I think that probably corresponds to Cashton's notion of thrill seeking. And then in the 4 types of curious people, right? So there's a 5-dimensional curiosity scale that I had in yellow, and then the 4 types in blue, where sometimes we're fascinated by it, sometimes we avoid it, and there's 2 other types there as well, but it's not curiosity can be avoided in those moments, and it's just one method that we have to deal with the situation. I will say this though, we're lucky that we have brains that allow us to explore that stressful situation after that stressful situation has happened. So even if we're avoiding in the moment, we may be curious later about, why did I do what I did? And how much of that was me? How much of that was the things around me as well? And just sort of exploring after the fact. So even if we're not curious in the moment, we can be curious after the fact about what happened.
That makes sense. There's Osama asking, curiosity sounds like a philosophical approach which we can apply to so many disciplines of education, am I right? How can we apply it in the best way in AI and in IA?
Oh, wow. So in AI, that's wonderful. Could we I'm just exploring that concept for a moment. Is it possible for our artificial intelligences to even direct us to things to be curious about, or could they be curious themselves? I don't know the answer to that, but what a wonderful question that we should certainly explore over the next 80 years and to be able to see what might that mean, and what might be the downsides to that as well. Within information architecture, I think we forget that we've come built with a natural information architecture. Sleep is a natural way to organize information. When we fall asleep, our brain works on our behalf to try to make sense of the day. Sometimes we'll dream about things that stress us out. Sometimes we will remember things from many, many years ago, and everything in between. And what it does is it's dreams and sleep are a way for us to be curious, perhaps in a slightly odd way. There's a lot of oddness, I think, about curiosity to be explored. But I think naturally we have an information organization proclivity. Within information, I think within IA, let me just be more direct here. I mentioned the oohs and the ahs of information architecture, right? Helping people to find what they were looking for and then discovering things that they weren't. I think that discovering things that they weren't is hugely critical. We will oftentimes help our businesses discover right, the products or services that we're offering. And of course, there's a transactional component to it. But I think that we should help people be just as curious about how could we make our lives better, not just how can we sell services and products. And I think that that's something that information architects are engaging in right now.
At that point, we will leave the global broadcast and we will return back to our own panel here. So at this stage, everyone is back in. Roisin, can you take us from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was wonderful to get that Q&A with Cassini, and great to see Dublin being represented as well with Kev's wonderful question. So we do have a couple of other questions that have come through as Cassini was talking that I might just ask and put to the panel. So first of all, we have this one about trust and curiosity. As we never know where this is going to bring us, would you share your thoughts on searching for the right ways to not end up in the rabbit hole while being curious? Don't know if anyone wants to take that one.
I can really quickly say that. I would say that you should embrace the rabbit hole as opposed to try and avoid it, especially because you're curious. Like I think Cassini has mentioned there that there's inherent risk that's just built in curiosity, and he gave that wonderful example with the egg. If you would just philosophize about the egg and just put it on a pedestal and never touch it again without exploring what that egg can actually give you, you'll probably never. So I think, yeah, understanding there's a risk and building towards that, and then just taking small calculated risk. Like you don't have to jump in in the black, in the darkness and just fall, right? But I think you can be a bit more calculated about this. So one way to mitigate risks in big projects is to break them down into smaller chunks and approach them one step at a time, rather than just jump in and try and do everything at the same time, which is why we have processes. So you can build curiosity as part of your process by just mitigating that risk and taking smaller calculated risks. So I would say, but definitely embrace the rabbit hole. It's fantastic.
And I think just to add on that from there, Radu, is I think to increase trust in curiosity, what you said is absolutely right. It's small steps, because somebody who might have had an experience whichever way it might be, through curiosity that has turned out painful. Then how do you reopen that? Well, you start small and take a tiny step towards opening that rabbit hole, because that will give you that reward. Actually, it wasn't so bad. Let's open it up again. So that's what I think.
I think for me, trust and curiosity but I think that's probably a very unique view, is, I arrived in the States not speaking English much. I didn't have anything of my education. I had no cultural paradigms to attach to. And I learned that you can't lose anything. The only thing what I could lose is my brain. And if I don't have my brain, then I'm screwed. So I see from that standpoint, curiosity and having trust in not knowing as very important. Now, in regard of projects, yes, there are processes, and I'm probably known for going down the rabbit hole. But here's what I do is, there is the rabbit hole for work, right? A topic interests me, and I have to go against the baseline of what I need to do. And then there's the after hours or the weekends where I can continue my rabbit hole and nobody cares, right? So I kind of compartmentalize my rabbit holes and how far I can go. What do I have to deliver for my deadlines, and what can I do because I'm curious? So that's kind of how I measure it. But the thing is, you can't lose anything with just going down the rabbit hole. What are you going to lose? Okay, some hours. Well, you know what? And you're a bit smarter after all those hours. There's no risk, really, from my perspective.
Brilliant, thank you. So we don't have any other questions other than 2 requests that have come in around getting access to these presentations or getting access to this sort of stuff. Now I know that Radu, you shared with us a QR to go to that Miro, and of course we can rewind and get that again. But Patrick, do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, well, of course, our content is all available on demand. So if you want to zoom in, I know there's some sensitive information that may be on the details, but if our speakers would like to make their slides available, we can definitely share those out afterwards. But the content will all be available to stream on demand really immediately, so you can go back and see the content again.
Wonderful.
Good. I think it's maybe time to have a look and see who won. We do have some giveaways, and Flavin, you've been very busy looking at the tweets, and I think we can now reveal some of the best tweets of the afternoon. And I think first up we have our ebook bundle. That's Liftoff and Living in Information. So let's see. Here's our winner. Take us through it.
Yeah, we're very lucky because we have a very interactive audience for all the events. The people are just like, sharing pictures with us, and some of them are really funny. So that's our winner here. It's Peter, and he just give us a view of his amazing front row seat straight into his home. So that's one of the bright sides or benefits of working from home or enjoying live events home. So well done,
exactly.
Peter.
Well done. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's a great picture, and I've seen a few comments following up from that one. So that's fantastic. So that is an ebook bundle, and Peter, we'll be in touch with you for how you can get that afterwards. We'll DM you on Twitter. The next is Axure, and this is a team subscription for Axure RP, which gives you cloud and all the wonderful things of enterprise prototyping. So Flavian, take us through the winner. Let's see who we have.
So the winner is Laura, and I think we had a lot of tweets about Natalie's presentation, and I think the using wine as a case study was very successful. So she says, why do I get the feeling Natalie and I would get on really well? Great talk about mind mapping and mental models.
Fantastic, Laura. Congratulations. We'll be in touch on Twitter to make sure you get that subscription. And our last, we've got two more to give away. They are going to be digital copies of Abby Covert's How to Make Sense of Any Mess. Let's go to the first. Here we are.
Same topic here. Same topic here about Natalie's using wine to explain mind mapping. So Flavio says, what would you tell to your 16-year-old self after review your mind mapping? So it's a question, maybe.
Deep, reflective one. And we've got one final winner today.
That's from Tiffany. So there are a number of tweets. It's a thread. So the first image is she gave us a view of what her settings look like. And something went wrong at some point. We lost Tiffany, and then Tiffany came back and showed a picture of her new settings with a little girl in the middle.
Very good. This is why we're doing this. We're all doing this from home. We're watching from multiple locations. I know we're not all in Dublin today, so it's great that we can reach out to as many people as possible. Great interactions, and congratulations to all of our winners. Now, everyone is a winner today, and this event is available on demand afterwards. Earlier on today, we had about 210 people with the link, and all 210 people have received details on how to get these particular goodies. So do make sure you follow the link. Make sure you claim that swag that we have. Also, do follow the link when you do claim that swag to enter into the global lottery, which will be 5 signed copies of How to Make Sense of Any Mess. That's a lot of copies Abby has to sign. Good luck to Abby signing. That's like hundreds between all our locations. And then the next one is, and these will end today. It's going to be midnight Pacific time. One winner will take a nice cancelling headphones from Optimal Workshops. That's fantastic. And that is really it. We are drawing to a close at this point. Let me have a look and see. We do have a few things to do before we do draw to a close, and that's to say a big thanks. And a big thanks to our wonderful speakers today. Honestly, we wouldn't have an event if it wasn't for you giving up your time, and of course a weekend to talk like this. This was announced only 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we had nothing. There wasn't even going to be an event today. And it was the team from World IA. They reached out and said, Patrick, Dublin UX, would you like to run an event? why not? 2 weeks, let's make it happen. So really kudos for all three of you for being so curious and rising to the challenge of speaking to the community today. So Natalie, really, really enjoyable presentation. Great wit, very funny. I think I may have heard a cat in the background as well. It was brilliant, so well delivered. There was a lot in there, and of course I do recommend everyone to replay it again. It is available immediately afterwards. And Radu, thank you so much. Long time contributor to the community from the audience. Great to see you speaking in front of everyone from your home to their homes. Great use of Miro, great use of real classic IA, a lot of detail in there. So thank you so much for preparing that. Really, really appreciated. And Tayyiba, thank you so much. We go back a long time to a previous career. We've had great opportunities to catch up over the last 2 weeks. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for bringing your perspective. And I don't think it's been very clear. You're actually streaming in today from Wales. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Yes, I
am. So that's fantastic. Again, this is the beauty of having these remote events, is that we can have people contribute and join in from anywhere. So kudos. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of our event today. And of course, to the organizing team, thank you so much to Roisin and Fabian for really helping and pulling all the stops to be part of today's event. This thing cannot run solo. It needs a team, and it's a great team behind Dublin UX to make it happen. So thank you so much. We have been broadcasting today in partnership with World IA Day, and World IA Day continues. It is a global event. You can log on to worldiaday.org and see which country is coming up next, and then join in their particular event. As part of the global community today, there is going to be at 4 o'clock an Ask Us Anything on accessibility, which is going to be quite interesting. And if you want to watch Cassini's talk again with additional people live, you can do that at 9:30. There will be a watch party, followed by at 10 o'clock tonight, an additional chance to ask Cassini questions. And that's going to be targeting the US at that point, but you're more than welcome to join into that. We're not quite finished, are we? Flavio, want to tell us a little bit about how we're going to network after the event today?
Well, I guess we all remember the time when we were meeting in hotels and bars after the Dublin UX meetup events. It's not going to happen. But what we can do now is to all go to network@dublinux.ie. It's a bit of an experiment, so we're using that tool called Wonder, and I can give you a quick demo. It's very intuitive, very straightforward, but I can give you a quick demo of the tool if you'd like.
Yes, please. And we'll all be joining there, so you'll get an opportunity to meet whoever is still watching us live. So this is only for live contributors, and hosts and speakers will also be in there too. Right, let me share your screen.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So yeah, so this is our room. It's a big room, and when you will enter the link in your browser, you will be invited. See that Roisin is with me in there, and we're waiting for new people to join us. So it's really just like a virtual networking area. So you can see your my little avatar here, or you can see Roisin moving around. What you have to do is just hold on special location on the screen, and you can move from one part of the room to another. And when you click on some, Roisin is just moving, so I can't manage. Here we go, and you can just like click on someone's avatar and just like start a chat. So it's just really like a virtual networking space. So we thought it would be funny to experiment with this.
And of course, when you get into closer proximity, you form what's called a bubble. And when you're in a bubble, you then can start hearing and seeing. And if you see there's someone else in the bubble, you can actually walk up into our bubble and join that bubble and join into that conversation. So it's going to be a little bit of fun. We'll see if it works. So we will encourage everyone to move over to the Wonder platform just immediately after here for the next maybe 15, 20 minutes, and we'll see how it works. And if it's successful, we'll definitely incorporate that into further events. So that is it. We are done. This is a great way to spend the Saturday. Great energy, great focus on positivity and curiosity. And again, I'm left with a great sense of wonder, literally. And I'm going to have to go back and plan how I'm going to maintain my curiosity and not let it go stale. I think that's so, so important. Everyone, thank you so much for being part of it. And to the community, if you'd like to take part in a future event by speaking, please reach out to us. We would love to have you take part and take to the virtual stage. So until the next time, we will see you over in Wonder for some networking. And thank you so much, everyone. Until the next time. Bye-bye now.